Good evening. The time is 6:06 p.m. and I would like to call to order the Board of Directors meeting for Ava Community Energy for Wednesday, December 17th, 2025. We are located here in Ava's headquarters at 1999 Harrison Street, Suite 2300, Oakland, California, 94612 in the boardroom. Members of the public wishing to make a comment tonight here in the room can do so by raising their hand and presenting a speaker card. Or if you're attending virtually, you can raise your hand in Zoom or do *9 if you're joining us through the telephone. Clerk, can you please take the roll call with the caveat that just wanted to let the folks who are attending know that we have our assistant board clerk, Raisa Ngoma, as the lead clerk this evening for professional development. And we are giving her the added extra wrinkle of checking folks' remote locations as we go through the roll call.
Yes, thank you. Alameda County. Albany. Berkeley.
Present.
Dublin.
Present.
Emeryville.
Present.
Could you please confirm your remote location?
Clipper Club 5 Captain Drive, Emeryville, California, 94608.
Thank you. Fremont.
Present.
Could you please verify your remote location?
Yes, 4917 Olson Terrace, Fremont.
Yes, thank you. Hayward. Lathrop. Livermore. Newark.
Present.
Could you please verify your remote location?
35653 Scarborough Drive, Newark, California.
Thank you. Oakland.
Present.
Could you please verify your remote location?
1100 Webster Street, second floor conference room.
Thank you. Pleasanton.
Present.
San Joaquin County.
I'm here and I'll be at the Larch Clover Community Center, 11157 West Larch Road in Tracy.
Thank you. Stockton.
Present. Stockton City Hall, 425 North Lincoln Street, Stockton, California, 95202.
Thank you. Tracy. Union City.
Here.
Community Advisory Committee. Community Advisory Committee.
Oh, that's me. Present.
Thank you. San Leandro.
Present.
Piedmont.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Great. Thank you for that. And thank you everyone for confirming your remote addresses. We will now continue on with the Pledge of Allegiance and would like Ed Hernandez to lead us in the pledge this evening, because I believe this is your last meeting as chair of the
Correct.
CIC. Thank you.
Thank you. If you're able to, I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you. We are now moving on to public comment. This item is reserved for persons wishing to address the board on any AVA-related matters that are not otherwise on this meeting agenda. Public comments on matters listed on the agenda shall be heard at the time the matter is called. As with all public comment, members of the public who wish to address the board are customarily limited to 2 minutes per speaker and must complete an electronic speaker slip. I may decrease or increase the time allotted to each speaker. I think we'll check with the clerk to see how many speaker cards we have this evening.
There are no members of the public with their hand raised at this time.
Okay, can we check online, please?
No members of the public with their hand raised online.
Okay, are there any members at any of our remote locations? If so, please raise the hand at your remote location. Seeing none, we're going to go ahead and close the public comment portion of the meeting and we're turning to the consent agenda. We have 6 items on our consent agenda as outlined in our agenda packet. Do we have any members, any of my colleagues want to pull an item from the consent agenda at this time? I don't see any. Oh, yeah.
I don't want to
Member
pull
Trio.
anything. I do have a question on,
Okay, let's wait and
An
make sure
item.
nobody wants to pull anything. I don't see any hands raised. Okay, go ahead, proceed with, oh, we do have a hand raised.
To, on the CAC guide and updates, there is one item and modification request. I think it's on consent though.
Okay, let's just park that for just 1 minute. Let's turn to Member Triga. Do you have a comment you wanted to share about an item on the consent agenda?
on item 9, CAC guide updates and term extensions. Are there any term limits on these on this body? Or is it a straight up just extension of terms?
I will turn to staff to answer that question.
I apologize. I am multitasking, communicating with the director. Would you mind repeating that question?
Yeah, are there term limits right now?
In the CAC
yeah.
guide, yes, there are existing term limits, correct?
What are they?
There are four terms.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from any board members on any of the items on consent? We have not had any requests to have any items pulled, so now is the time for any questions. Okay, I'm turning to our CAC chair who has a comment, I believe.
Well, if possible to discuss item 9 further, if a board member would like to pull that, I just have a quick request and modification to that brought through the CAC about extending the term for one member who's also at 4 terms.
Okay, I think we would need a board member to pull that item. Otherwise, we would proceed with our consent agenda.
I'll pull item 9.
Okay, member Sakakihara has pulled agenda item number 9. So we're going to hear that in just a minute. We're going to go ahead and proceed with items 4 through 8. And I'm turning to the board clerk to see if we have any public comment on any consent agenda items 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8 at this time.
There are no members of the public with their hand raised.
Okay, do we have any hands raised online?
None.
And any hands raised at our remote locations? Seeing none, I'm closing public comment for those items 4 through 8, and I would entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
Moved by member Triga, seconded by the vice chair. Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote, please.
Alameda County. Albany,
Yes.
Berkeley,
Aye.
Dublin,
Aye.
Emerville,
Aye.
Fremont,
Aye.
Hayward, Lathrop, Livermore, Newark,
Aye.
Oakland,
Aye.
Pleasanton,
Aye.
San Joaquin County,
Yes.
Stockton,
Yes.
Tracy, Union City,
Aye.
Community Advisory, never mind, sorry, San Leandro,
Aye.
Piedmont.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved.
Great. Items 4 through 8 are unanimously approved, and we are now turning to agenda item number 9 with a request from member Sakakihara. Please proceed.
Yeah, I don't have a comment on it. I was just pulling it so that we could continue the discussion.
Great. Okay, so I'm turning it over to our staff to do a brief summary of this agenda item number 9.
Thank you. And I will turn it over to Alex DeGiorgio to do a brief summary of the CAC guide updates. I know that we didn't plan to present this, so I would plan to just do a really short summary of what the changes are, Alex, if you could, and then allow for the discussion. I think there's a particular question really focused on term limits, if I'm not mistaken, so we can probably just do a really quick high level of the other changes that are being proposed here.
Sure thing. Thank you, Howard. So the CAC guide update is an administrative update to the guide related to primarily adding one seat for San Joaquin County in recognition of the county's membership. And then there are some additional updates made to the guide with regard to standardizing the terms of the members. And that's what the extension to April involves. And then that would proceed with following that would be a staggering of the terms. And then there's some other, again, administrative updates to just make the guide consistent with present practice. And I think that's the summary for now. I guess I would turn it back to the CAC chair for the comments that he wanted to make.
Okay, so we've heard a staff presentation on agenda item number 9. I am now turning to my colleagues to see if we have any questions on this agenda item. I'm looking to see in the room if we have any hands raised. I don't see any hands raised online. So we can hear now from our CAC chair.
Thank you very much. So in regards to since we haven't been able to do the CEC report, and this is a consent item, the CEC did hear about the guide and updates. And we supported the staff's update to add unincorporated San Joaquin County and extend all terms to April 30, 2026. We did notice and understood there was a term limit on the CEC membership. We have members who've served maybe 2 terms. I understand they can go up to 4, but we also recognize member Cynthia Landry, who has served 4 terms since 2017. So she would be extended through April 2026 to offer her the one-time courtesy to extend it if she wanted to serve a 5th term until we have somebody else replace. So she seemed interested in serving 2 additional years. This would only be specific to her, as the board also provided the courtesy to at-large members to serve another term after it's been capped for 2 terms with the CAC at-large members. So at-large members have 2 terms. The other members of CAC are term limited to 4. So we're looking to add member Cynthia Landry to have a 5th term as a one-time courtesy, giving her tenure since 2017, her interest to continue serving, but beyond that, it would be staff's recommendations to follow suit, adding the additional seat to unincorporated San Joaquin County and extending all terms to April 30, 2026. Looking for the board to support that modification for our member Landry, who served since 2017, early on since the organization was formed, and she's looking to continue. And she may also personally be interested in going back to law school, she's told me. So she's in the back if anybody wanted to hear from her as well. So dedicated to the community, serving for a long-term and valuable asset to the CEC. Thank you.
Okay, so appreciate that perspective. And if we don't have any other questions from our board members at this time, I'm looking at our board clerk to see if we have any public comment on this item.
There are no members of the public with their hand raised in person or remote.
Okay, and do we have any members of the public at remote locations who wish to comment on this item? Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment for this item and bring this back to our board for any comments or suggestions. Yes, member Gia.
Yeah, I do have actually a couple of questions. Chair Hernandez, you cited other cases, if I understood correctly, of one-time exceptions being made in maybe through the chair. I'd like to ask the CEO to expound on that. Have we had this kind of situation before where a term was extended on a one-time basis? I was also curious, is this lifetime terms, or can someone hypothetically have some amount of time, 1 year, perhaps cooling off, and then being able to apply again? How does that work?
I'll make a quick comment, and I may need to follow up a little bit there. So I may phone a friend with Alex as well. And actually, I see Alex with his hands up. So I'll make a quick comment that I'll defer to you. I'm not aware of exceptions that we made to term extensions. I don't know that it's under the purview of staff to make that decision per the CAC guide or the JPA. I can't speak to the consecutive nature of the terms versus if you were to be allowed to come back. So maybe I'll point to Alex if that's an area that you were able to elaborate on.
Yes, thanks, Howard. So the term limits don't have to apply contiguously, and this is the first time that a CAC member has reached their term limit. Member Landry is the first person to reach their term limit. These term limits of four 2-year terms, so that's not a new update. So that wasn't something that was new to this item. And I think staff would recommend that the rules be applied impartially. We're very grateful for Member Landry's service. I personally remember serving alongside her on the CCA steering committee a lifetime ago, and I'm very grateful for her service. There has never been an exception made to the term limits before, and I think staff would recommend that the rules be applied impartially.
Okay, thank you for that. I think we should see if we have any questions from anybody else, or anyone want to make a motion at this time.
Chair, may I ask for clarification from staff?
Okay,
Because I think, and Alex, I understand the CAC at-large members are normally 2 terms, so I'd be termed out, but I have the option to extend for additional term. Is that because of the previous modification? In the previous role, I think Member Balch was the chair then, and I think we extended the term for the CAC members with the last modification. So technically, I'd be at 2, but I believe I have 1 more option to serve an additional 2-year term because of modifications from last time. So help me understand if I'm correct or not, if you may, please.
For the at-large.
Yes.
Yes, yes, the terms for the at-large members, which were new positions created in a previous update. You and Member Lutz were given an additional term there.
And just for us, nobody else. It's just generally 2 terms, but because of the modifications, we were afforded another term.
It was because the changes were made in the middle of your term, yes.
okay. So I think we have spent, I understand what the issue is, and I think everyone understands what the issue is, but I think we need to move on since we have a packed agenda tonight. Do we have any other members who want to ask a question or make a motion at this time? Vice Chair. Oh, yes. Member Murata.
Thank you, Chair. Alex, quick question. This is Councilmember Murata from Dublin. I am always in support typically of continuity of experience as well as continuity of government. In this particular case, I just have one question, which is in respect to my comment about continuity. Is there an opportunity cost that we need to be aware of when we allow Member Landry to continue on to her next term here?
Thank you, Director Murata. Well, I guess the opportunity cost would be the appointment of a new member. Staff is preparing for a new application and appointment period early next year, and that seat in the North region would be up for a new appointment. And typically, we receive by order of magnitude many more applications from the North CAC region than any other region. So there's quite a bit of interest from the community to apply for those seats there that represent that region. So that would be the opportunity cost.
Okay. Then quick follow-up question is, what risk do we have by not allowing that election to occur now?
Can I just clarify? We are going to go forward with an application process for the CAC regardless.
Okay.
So
is there any risk that we face allowing this particular extension is all I'm asking for.
To be clear, we are not recommending an extension.
Oh, okay. Sorry, then I misheard. I will rescind my comments.
Chair, I'll move the item.
Thank you. So moved. Sorry. Moved by former chair and Member Balch, and I'm looking at the vice chair.
I'll second staff's recommendation.
And seconded by our vice chair. So let's go ahead and proceed with a roll call vote.
Alameda County, Albany.
Yep.
Berkeley,
Aye.
Dublin,
Aye.
Emerville,
Aye.
Fremont,
Aye.
Hayward, Lathrop, Livermore, Newark,
Aye.
Oakland,
Aye.
Pleasanton,
Aye.
San Joaquin County,
Yes.
Stockton,
Yes.
Tracy, Union City,
Aye.
San Leandro,
Aye.
Piedmont.
Aye.
Consent agenda item 9 approved.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate that discussion. We do very much value all of the members of our CAC and certainly those who have served for multiple terms and have really shown their commitment to the organization and the mission. So thank you so much. Okay, we now have, we're going to go a little bit out of order right now because we now have our 10th board member in the building, in the room, which is very exciting. And I know that we have another member, Member Marquez, who would like to attend this meeting, but she has an issue that she's dealing with and would like to use the good cause provision to attend. And this is something that I have never participated in before, so it's kind of exciting. And I am going to turn it over to our Deputy General Counsel, John Perkins, to explain what's going to happen next.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone. We have the opportunity when we have a quorum of members in the room to permit a member who has exigent circumstances to participate remotely, even though that has not been agendized, or rather has not been noticed. At this time, may I ask, is Supervisor Marquez on the line?
Yes. She just got promoted.
Great. Yep. Supervisor Marquez, this is John Perkins. Are you able to hear me?
We
I will,
see,
I will.
we see her.
Oh, I
and She's
see her.
logging in.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to disclose that I am using Just Cause with respect to AB 2449. I had an unexpected request tonight to care for my elderly grandmother who is 96. It's just her and I here in her home. So I will be participating and keeping my camera on throughout the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. This is John Perkins. I'm going to just reiterate some of the points you made, which of course are the requirements of this. So you did note that you are caring for someone this evening. You have noted that the only adult in your presence is your, did I hear your grandmother? Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. And you did mention that you will keep your camera on, which is of course the other requirement. So thank you very much. We have met the requirements for this participation.
Thank you so much.
Great, and I'm so glad you're able to join us. And I do want to just also pause to mention the members who have joined us since we took roll call. So if we can just acknowledge the members who are in the room, and that is Member Barrientos, we have Member Lopez, we have Member Roche, we have Member Nygaard. Have I got everyone who has joined us in the last few minutes? So really appreciate you being here in person. We do have, as we mentioned before, a very active agenda this evening. So we are now going to continue along with our regular agenda. Item number 10, CEO report.
Okay. As Raisa brings that forward, I'll provide a quick update of activities here. So first, just a quick summary. We did have our last executive committee meeting on Wednesday, December 3rd. Members received an update on the value proposition. We'll talk about that in tonight's agenda as well. Our opt-out fee removal, which was on consent, and an update on community investment grants. The next meeting is scheduled for January 14th at 3 p.m. That's a little out of the typical timeframe of the first Wednesday, so I just want to make note of that. It is January 14th is the date of the next executive committee meeting. Just below that is an updated schedule for the 2026 list of public meetings. Obviously, we have our executive committee, our CAC, our full board, our FAP, and our MRL all laid out there. Those are, for the most part, follow our typical cadence of what we normally do year to year. And so wanted to issue this schedule for the public. I will note that there's a potential to move some meetings around. I'm made aware that our Cal CCA Lobby Day may interfere with our February executive committee meeting. So TBD on whether that meeting needs to get moved. And then for the FAP and the MRL meetings, I know that Adrian will be continuing to work with our board members to just confirm quorum and availability for those meetings, since they tend to be a little bit more ad hoc in nature of how those are scheduled. But otherwise, these are the meetings to plan for. You can scroll to the next page. Great, thank you. On to the compliance notice section. I just wanted to flag that we are preparing to distribute our power content label mailer. This is a compliance requirement that we send to all customers. It includes a summary of our power content mix from 2024. So typically it's about a year lag. So we're preparing for that. We have two different versions, one for each of our counties, Alameda County and San Joaquin County. This document was just recently updated, so it has an updated URL to be able to click on in order to view that mailer. If you could just do that real fast, right? So for people's review, that'd be useful.
One second.
as she's pulling that up, I'll just comment that the information in the mailer itself is not new. We've provided that to the board already for consumption, what our power content was from 2024. And it's a really nice sort of glossy mailer that we're going to send out to our customers that highlight some of the value that we bring to them in terms of savings and programs. And then that last table there, the eye chart that we're looking at right now, is a summary of our 2024 power content. No changes to that from what we've reported on over the last few months. Right, so you can go back to the CEO report now. Just a couple more updates to provide. As she does that, the next item is related to our planned service for unincorporated San Joaquin County. Obviously, we launched the Stockton and Lathrop this year in April. We are making plans for our launch to unincorporated San Joaquin County customers in May of 2026. When we evaluate this timing, we're always looking at multiple components, financial impacts, operational efficiency, and overall customer experience, amongst other things. We've had active discussions with Supervisor Rickman and his staff about the timing here. The sort of spring timing is pretty typical for us for what we've done historically. So May, again, kind of sits in that window of time. That's what we're preparing for at this time. This is not an action item that staff seeks from the board. This is an operational decision that we've generally made year to year. So therefore, it's just being provided here in the CEO report for an update and just full transparency to our board of what we're planning on. This is always a heavy lift. We saw good success with this with Stockton and Lathrop. We got out there to the cities, attended a number of events, really active education campaign to our new customers. So we envision doing the same thing for unincorporated San Joaquin County, of course, to make sure that the customers know who AVA is, what are these, what is the new service that they'll be enrolled in, and how a CCA operates. So we're looking forward to that opportunity, and thank you, Supervisor Rickman, for the close engagement on this topic as well. The last update here is just a really brief status update. Last month we had a very substantive dialogue related to bringing forward a contract related to Deloitte on our customer programs roadmap, and we discussed some of the concerns related to contracts they may have in place with the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency. So I just wanted to alert our board and the public to be aware that we're going to delay this customer programs roadmap by about 3 to 6 months as we evaluate and research the procurement policies of our 18 members, so the 16 cities, 2 counties of Alameda and San Joaquin, so that we really understand what are the procurement policies and provisions that our member cities and counties have in place so that we can adequately address the concerns. We're going to do that research. We're going to bring that forward for consideration and review, and then we'll be able to determine how we're going to move forward on the work product itself related to the customer programs roadmap. So that's just a brief update there. The last thing I'll just say is, and this is not in the CEO report itself, but I just wanted to take a moment to share a little gratitude and thanks to our staff and to our board members. We're wrapping up the calendar year here. It's been a really active, very busy year. Lots going on, of course. We welcomed a number of new board members early this year, new to perhaps elected roles for your cities, but also new to our agency. So I appreciate the time that everyone's devoted to our agency and the leadership that you provide for us in working to operationalize our agency. I also want to send a heartfelt thanks to our staff for all the hard work this year. We delivered on some great accomplishments and milestones. The list is too long, of course, to comprehensively list off, but we launched a number of programs. Our smart home charging program, where we've enrolled thousands of customers into home charging to try to reduce their costs. We've launched our bike electric program, which has been met with huge enthusiasm and interest. We are wrapping up our Healthy Communities Induction Cooktop program. We did our ribbon cutting for our Ava Charge site, our first site in Oakland City Center West. We've signed our EPC contracts for our critical municipal facilities portfolio, 8 sites spread throughout our territory. So just a lot of huge wins there. Very proud of the accomplishments of our staff and the hard work that they've brought. We closed on 2 roughly $2 billion each prepaid transactions. We did a ribbon cutting for our Cola Energy Storage Project, which is sited in unincorporated San Joaquin County. So that's a multi-100 megawatt clean energy battery project, bringing in new property tax revenues, creating jobs and everything. So very thankful, and just wanted to acknowledge some of that and thank our staff for the hard work this year.
Yeah, hear, hear. Really appreciate the highlights of how busy everyone has been. And we see how the board really sees how hard you work and how hard our executive team and how hard all of the employees of AVA work to accomplish the mission of the agency on behalf of our constituents and our ratepayers. So we really, really appreciate all the hard work this year. Okay, so this is an informational item and we are moving right along. So I have, are there any clarifying questions in the room by any board members at this time? The Vice Chair.
Just one question for the power content label. The state lays out exactly what that label should look like, or do they just require the renewables piece and we add the extra stuff?
The first sort of half of that is extra stuff that we're able to design, but the power content label itself is fairly heavily regulated. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions from my colleagues attending online about the CEO report? Seeing none, I'll turn to public comment. Do we have any public comment at this time?
The members of the public with their hand raised at this time, remote or in person.
Okay, and none at our remote sites, just double checking. Okay, I'm looking to our CAC chair. Any comments from the CAC chair? Okay, since this is an informational item, I don't see any continuing engagement on it. Thank you again for the report. And we are closing agenda item number 10 and moving on to agenda item number 11, which is Ed Hernandez, which is his last report as CAC chair.
Thank you very much, Chair. We had the opportunity to meet this last Monday to discuss some of the items, and I'll cover some of the items and we'll speak to the positions or votes that the CAC did that evening. We covered the information around the on-bill credits, the value proposition or the financial forecast, as well as future agenda items. Specifically, though, there was an ad hoc committee group meeting regarding the customer program strategic roadmap. I understand now from CEO that may be delayed 3 to 6 months based on the policy. As you know, the CAC voted last month to reject that CSA with Deloitte that the board supported then. We sent a letter of support for the strategic roadmap. You might have it in your packet. Thank you, Adrian. I'd like to read that briefly into the record. I know we are short on time, but I do want to emphasize the CAC's interest and position, and we voted to support this letter collectively. We want to express our appreciation for the efforts of the staff on AVA's customer program strategic roadmap. The CAC considers this program to be a high priority. This work encompasses critical projects, including the AVA Bike Electric Rebate Program, the Smart Home Charging, the AVA Charge, the critical municipal facilities, the Healthy Communities Pilot, Building Efficiency Accelerator, that Smart Home Battery, the Resilient Hub Initiative, and any new programs that will come out of the workshop. So we're very supportive of that roadmap. We support the board director's decision not to move forward with the proposed contractor. The CAC feels that this is the best course of action for AVA customers and the community. The CAC supports the overall goals of the customer program strategic roadmap, which is structured to attract customers and encourage community input and buy-in of AVA's programs. We also agree with the idea of developing a policy or framework to policy framework, and actions that promote no fear and support of future requests for proposals. Our clear intention is to get the customer program's strategic roadmap back on track as quickly as possible with an organization that respects immigrants as a core constituent. If AVA cannot find a contractor, AVA should consider developing the program in-house. We decided to vote on this and passed it almost unanimously, except for one member voting not to, but in generally, the CAC really emphasizes a no-fear policy for future RFPs, building equity, transparency, and respect for immigrant communities. Vice Chair Souza noted some community feedback from Dohee Kim suggesting that projects be moved in-house or using trusted local contractors for the program. And as well, we shift from buy-in to get the buy-in from the community. So that's one thing we covered. On-bill credits, I'll cover that later in the agenda. Value proposition, also, we got some support there. But for future agenda items, we want to make sure in the January presentation that I understand there's maybe a discussion of interest around AI-related electrical demand, such as data centers, and how that might be impacting AVA's need to support that entity. And there's also going to be a request, I believe the Resilient Hub Initiative, that we received maybe a report out from Emerald Cities Collective and the Local Clean Energy Alliance in the January February meeting to see how that program's going, what are some of the challenges or opportunities to support it overall, and then provide that feedback to the board of directors. But in closing to the report, the CAC remains committed to advancing AVA's missions of equitable, community-driven energy solutions. We appreciate the board's consideration of our recommendations and look forward to continued collaboration. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that report. And also thank you for your service.
My pleasure.
It's been really nice getting a chance to know you and work with you, and you have shown great leadership on behalf of the CAC and commitment to the mission of this agency. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions on this informational item? I'm looking in the room. I'm also looking online. I do not see any hands raised. Looking at the board clerk, do we have any public comment on this agenda item?
No public comment at this time.
I do not. Oh, we do maybe have a public commenter. I see someone approaching the podium.
Jessica Tovar, Local Clean Energy Alliance. I just wanted to give an appreciation to both Cynthia and Ed for their representation on the community advisory. I'm sorry, Cynthia. I would have loved to see you continue on the community advisory committee. Appreciate you. Appreciate the service. SEIU 10-1 and Ed. I really appreciate you. We had a interesting introduction when you were on the board, and so I really appreciate all that you've done with the Community Advisory Committee, and I hope that we can all stay in touch. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that comment. Any other public comments?
No other members of the public. at
Oh,
this time.
wait, there is one more. Yes.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Doi Kim with the Local Clean Energy Alliance. Just wanted to echo sincere appreciation to Ed as leading the chair with the Community Advisory Committee. Though I've only got to know you briefly through the public comment session, I truly felt the deep democracy and governance and care that you carry with this role. So I just really wanted to put that on record, but I also wanted to share appreciation for CAC's policy in regards to the customer program strategic roadmap. While attending the CAC meeting just 2 evenings ago, I just wanted to shout out the immense care and conscientious kind of labor that has taken staff to reach that point. And I just appreciate the CAC providing structure in terms of creating a policy to kind of concretize how we can make sure that maybe these patterns don't repeat, but there's progress towards the customer program strategic roadmap, which has a lot of exciting potential. And I just wanted to thank the board also for taking the time to consider the policy provided by CAC, because as a public member and as also in AVA service territory, I really do think that that proposal has a lot of potential in preventing kind of a repeat of what that delay could look like in the future. But I just wanted to share appreciation for all members of the CAC and the board for taking public comment and pivoting and looking towards a new year with this. So I appreciate that.
Great. Thank you for those comments. Do we have any public commenters online? We have one more in the room. Okay. Anyone else in the room, please line up at this time. No one else in the room. Okay. This is our last public comment in the room, and then we will see if we have any public comments online.
I also, my name is Cynthia Landry. I wanted to thank also Ed's leadership on the CAC. He's an incredible, talented person, and we all appreciate the fact that we're able to advocate effectively as a team. And, you know, he's set a very positive tone. And personally, Ed, I'd like to see you in some form of important government position. And as for myself, I work for Alameda County Social Services during the day, where I'm a social worker assigned primarily to the homeless population. And I want to say that I've enjoyed my time as a CAC member from the inception I have learned a lot about renewable energy, about RECs, about all these different things that being a social worker, I'm not necessarily familiar with. But most importantly, for me, it has been a privilege to represent the community in which I am a part of, and to serve all population, but with a special emphasis on those folks who need extra support and care. So thank you very much for the opportunity to serve, and I'll be serving on something else also eventually. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so
thank
much
you,
for
Ed.
sharing those comments with us. Do we have any public comments online?
There are no members of the public at this time.
Okay, and I don't see any hands raised from our remote locations. This is an informational item, so no need to take any action at this time. Thank you again so much for the report and for your service. And we are moving on, we're closing out agenda item number 11, moving on to agenda item number 12. As you may recall, this was on our last agenda that went long in November. So we are starting off this agenda with that holdover item. This is a 2025 legislative wrap-up and 2026 preview. This is also an informational item. And Sam Sadly?
Sadel.
Say again?
Sadel.
I don't know if I can say that. So I'm just gonna.
Sadel.
Oh, Sadel. I wasn't hearing the D.
Oh,
I
no
must
worries.
think I'm losing my hearing. Anyway, apologies there. I do appreciate that you hung in there on Zoom at the last meeting. Sorry we didn't get to you. I'm glad you're here in person now to make this presentation to us. Thank you.
It's all good. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Perfect. If Adrian, if we could get the eraser, perfect. So thank you all for your time today. It's great to be here again. I presented a similar presentation at the MRL as well as the CAC in November, but I'm happy to bring it here to you all today. We are next slide, if you don't mind. So we are here at the end of the legislative session. We have made it all the way through. It was a good year. It was a successful year, and we're excited. And so I'm going to walk you through today what we covered over the past year, some major changes to keep an eye on, and then what we expect to see in the coming year. Next slide, please. So over the course of the year, bills came and went, and we ended up, there were 28 bills that we were tracking very closely. Of those, we took we ended the session with formal positions on 12 bills, 10 in support, 2 at a support if amended. Of those, 4 were signed and 2 were vetoed. You may note that these numbers differ slightly from what we asked you to approve at in April of this year. The reason being is that 2 of our bills that were in the support category, SB 453 and AB 915, if I can read 925, if I can read my handwriting, the relevant portions for us were amended out of the bill as it went through the legislative process. So we didn't have a bill that we cared to support at that point because our sections just were fully removed. Similarly, we had a support if amended, which was SB 283. It was amended, therefore we were able to move into a support position. So that's why you see these numbers are ever so slightly different from where we began the session. You'll note that on the side here, we have a separate box for cap and invest as it is known now. The reason I separate this out to the side is this was something that came up in the middle of the session. It was not something that was early on. It was something that was added later at the request of the governor. These bills ended up including a number of our preferred language, which was good to see. We were unable to come to you all for support or approval because they were moving so quickly. So we didn't adopt a support position on these bills, but we did work to ensure that some of the language from bills that we had supported worked its way into the bills. So that's why they're slightly off to the side. Next slide, please. In particular, I want to just, sometimes it's good that you get to the end to think back and look at some of the wins that you had. And we had a good number of wins this session. Particularly want to call out 4 here, and I'll get deeper into the language. But SB 283, which was a battery safety bill, we were able to get that amended, our language adopted. Major props to my colleague Dominic, who was able to bring this one across the line. SB 541, I led the push on this particular one. We were able to get some language inserted and then removed. Unfortunately, it got removed. We'll get into that more in a minute, but I think that was a success. Also on 254, this was a place where we worked across Cal CCA and across the broader industry association on removing threats to the autonomy of CCAs. This is a key piece that we'll talk about, this autonomy, as we get a little moving forward, but this was a real collective effort to remove the autonomy threats, and the bill was signed into law in a positive manner. And lastly, I wanted to call out Kendall on my team, who did a lot, the yeoman's work on AB 222, and we were able to work with the author to reject a hostile amendment that we did not want to see around data centers. So lots of wins this session. Obviously, we didn't win them all, but we wanted to highlight 4 real positives from the session. Next slide, if you don't mind. So at this point, I'm going to walk through this is lots and lots of not very attractive slides here, but I'm going to walk through and highlight a few key bills. Please note down if you have questions. I'm happy to dig in a little deeper into any of these, but there's a lot of text on it. I definitely see that. Okay, first and foremost, as we're looking at affordability, I want to call out 792, which became portions of which were integrated into the cap and trade bill we discussed earlier, 1207. This is about the climate credit and when it is usable. This was something that we supported because as the focus of affordability, we wanted to ensure that the climate credit is matched to the bills that are at the highest levels to ensure that that's not when people tip into arrears. This was the bill 729 did not move forward, but the text moved into AB 1207, which was signed into law. The PUC will now come back and suggest which of the 4, how they want to exactly run this program, but we're happy to see that this language did move forward. SB 254, this was the big affordability package for the entire year. This included a lot of interesting things, some that we really liked. I want to call out 2 quick things from this. One is it includes the creation of a transmission infrastructure accelerator, which is an important piece as we look towards how do we drive down costs for transmission and distribution, which is where we are seeing increased cost on customer bills. And so we think that the inclusion of this transmission infrastructure accelerator is, the point being, is to facilitate public borrowing public financing for transmission projects. So we think that this could be a really valuable piece for the broader affordability agenda. I should note it also includes a 20% tax credit for transmission projects in the state. So lots of good things to like in 254. Lastly, it includes expedited SECRA review for clean energy infrastructure. Lots of good pieces in there. One thing to note is that demand side is that originally there was a piece of this that got combined into here that would have included a demand side management program review. This, which came out of AB 825, but what was concerning about this is this would have given the CEC the power to shutter energy efficiency or DR programs that it deemed not cost effective. And we were really worried that this would be a real intrusion into the autonomy of CCAs. We were able to work with our broader Cal CCA to have this language removed before this was voted upon and signed. So this was a real win in that we were able to get things we like into 254 and things that we don't like out of it. Next page. One thing I'll note here is there's nothing under protecting community choice. Real win. There were no direct attacks on community choice this year. When it comes to decarbonization, I think quick call out here is AB 39, which AB 39 requires cities in the next 5 years to develop, larger municipalities and counties to develop electrification, decarbonizations, community energy plans. This was something that we supported and was signed into law. We'll be doing a session on this in next year with our muni pals about this bill and what it looks like moving forward. Also, AB 306, which I'm sure you all know, this was signed earlier in the session. This is the REACH code moratorium. But one thing I do want to call out here is on the decarbonization side is this is 283. Again, we mentioned this as a win earlier, but what we're excited about here is this is a battery safety bill. And we saw it and we were supportive of it initially with an amended posture. And what we wanted to see changed was, one, the requirements wouldn't be applied retroactively, and that it would only apply to utility scale batteries. We were able to get both of these changes, and thus we were able to support the bill. So we're very pleased that that was signed into law. Next slide, please. And I know I'm going fast, so please slow me down if necessary. I want to quickly now talk a bit about some of these local development bills that you see further down here. 1423 and 314. These were both charger bills around installation and chargers. We were able to, unfortunately, some language that we didn't love was brought in on board, but also a lot of it comes into the CEC. As a core, we're going to continue to monitor this space around vehicle charging, and we'll see what comes up next year. But for now, we don't expect significant changes in the vehicle charging space on the legislative side moving forward. Next slide, please. Data centers. Obviously, this was a huge focus of the legislative session. We expect this only to get even more intense into the next year. You'll see here AB 222, which, as I mentioned, we were able to get some good language inserted and then eventually the whole bill was paused. I think we are keeping very close eye on this for the next year. This is about energy reporting and energy use reporting, both pre-construction and then post-construction of data centers. We're keeping a very close eye on this. And so we want to make sure that we'll keep everybody in the loop as to where this goes. But where I want to jump down a little bit to increase this dynamic rates section. There are two bills here, both of which were vetoed by the governor. We supported one of them. We were in a supportive amended posture on the other. And looking at the governor's veto messages here, he was particularly called out a couple things. One is the desire to protect CEC and CPUC jurisdiction and decision-making. Both of these bills would have obligated the CEC and the CPUC to do various things on dynamic rates and load shifting. And so the governor, and this should just to highlight it for us, how protective he is and the governor's office is of the PUC and the Energy Commission, and ensuring that no additional workload be placed on those entities without funding. So this is a place that we're going to have to keep an eye on. We expect more bills in the coming year on that, but the governor's posture likely will not change in the coming year. Great. Next slide. I swear I'm coming to an end, I promise. A couple of bills around IOUs. You'll see AB 740, which once again, this would have, as you can see, directs the CEC to develop something. This was also vetoed by the governor for that same concern about putting additional workload without funding. One thing to note, you'll see at the bottom is SB 24. This was a bill about prohibiting IOUs from using ratepayer funds for certain political activities. You see right above it, SB 1167, it's a very similar bill. 1167 was signed into law, 24 was vetoed. There apparently was a drafting error, but we should expect, which was cited in the governor's veto message, we should expect something like this to come back again in the coming year. Great. Next slide, please. I'm going to move past the next slide. And one more for me. Feel free to reach out if you want to dig in any of these later. When we presented initially earlier to the MRL, we had a request from Director Tregub to go a little deeper on our cap and invest spending and exactly how that process went forward. This is what we have here. And the big takeaway from what I would take away from this is it all happened behind closed doors. And while the numbers on the left look very similar to the numbers on the right, what you'll see is the numbers on the left are percentages and the numbers on the right are actual funding amounts. And so you saw a lot of places where cap and trade dollars were used in percentage formulas, but cap and invest dollars are used in more fixed amounts. I would also call your attention to the bottom two pieces of this. You see CARB, community air protection programs had gotten $0 from the previous structure. It will now get $250 million per year. But the biggest one is the one right at the bottom. And that is the legislature's discretion. The legislature will now have $1 billion to play with every year in cap and invest dollars. And so that means that we could see pots being used in different ways. We're obviously we and others will be making asks of the governor, but there's a lot of different pieces in there and where that could end up. Next slide. Quickly here, the winners and the losers. I'd say one thing that we did see is that EVs and EV infrastructure, which had both been angling for GGRF funding, were left out, as well as distributed energy and demand flex incentives, including DSGS, which many know had been funded and had some funds to continuing into this year, but it is not funded as of yet into the out years. Great. Next slide. So what does next year look like? Next year, you see this is the timeline. We finish one year, we start right over again. One thing to note, it is a little bit of a condensed year because of the election. They're gonna pack up their bags a little earlier, about 3 weeks earlier than they did this year. So things are gonna be accelerated, which means we're gonna be coming to you all likely in March and April to look at bills for the 2026 session. Next slide. Okay, so quickly, what did we learn from last year and what are we looking at for next year? As you can see, as I mentioned, Governor Newsom is very defensive of these existing PUC and Energy Commission authorities. We also see the state approach to data centers remains to be determined. There's a lot happening at the federal level. There's a lot happening at the state level. So keep an eye closely on that space. And lastly, we feel that we have CCAs as a whole have really had some wins. We have growing clout in Sacramento, and it's not to say that we can make everything we want happen, but we are seeing some real positive movement in that direction. On the right there, you can see what we're looking at for next year. We're looking at unresolved issues from this year. There's a lot of them. New issues, particularly around funding gaps, both funding gaps left by cap and trade, the federal changes, and then of course, there's a very large structural deficit for the state. So we do not have, everybody's going to be up in Sacramento, hat in hand, asking for money, and it's a very challenging financial year. We do expect some CCA initiatives around T&D and PCIA reform and potential changes to what the Senate Utilities and Energy Committee looks like. Okay, I will stop there. Chair, I defer to you.
Great. Thank you so much for that informative summary. I know we're all elected officials and we could talk about policy all night long. We do not have all night to talk about it. So, but we did still want to go ahead and bring this report to the board, to the full board, because we do get questions from the board all the time about our advocacy as an agency. And I think we all realize that it's so important what's happening at the state level, at the federal level, as it directly impacts the ability of AVA Community Energy to effectively and efficiently carry out our mission. So, but if folks have pressing questions, we need to ask in front of the whole body tonight. This is the time to do it. Otherwise, I would just encourage members to reach out to Sam directly, and we can talk more at future meetings about our kind of policy advocacy roadmap going forward. Does that sound good? Okay. So with that said, are there any questions for my colleagues here in the room right now? Seeing none, are there any questions online? I don't see any hands raised. Okay, returning to public comment. Do we have any public comment in the room?
There are no members of the public with their hand raised remotely or online, remotely or in person.
Great. Do we have any public comment via Zoom? No. And at our remote locations? Seeing none. Okay, we're closing public comment. As I mentioned, this is an informational item. I really appreciate all the work that went into it. It's a very informative report. And I really like the summaries too at the end about, kind of what looking back and looking forward. I appreciate that framing. So thank you so much. We are closing out agenda item number 12, which was an informational item, no action. We are moving on to agenda item number 13, which is an action item. It is our joint powers agreement amendment. And our attorney, John Perkins, is going to make the presentation.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here. I appreciate your presence in particular because this is a, brief but important update to our JPA, which requires, of course, a 2/3 vote of our total body. So there's only a few slides here, but fundamentally at a high level, this is really just to reflect in our JPA more clearly how we've already been operating. So this is a housekeeping exercise, but an important one. All right, so would you go to the next slide, please? So I'll be presenting the 6 changes we intend to make, what they are and why they are. Obviously on the left, you can see the change, but I'll point out this is to clarify some of the details about the chair of the CAC. Once again, nothing is changing. It's simply me making express the way we've always behaved and also what is expected of such, generally speaking, of such a role. Could we have the next slide, please, Raisa? Thank you very much. An important change here. So the voting formula used to have 2 sections. The first section only applied to our first 2 years of existence, which of course is behind us. And then we've clarified, we've made sure that the JPA is now reflecting very accurately how the board proceeds in terms of determining the amount of energy that our various municipalities use in the rare occasion that we have a weighted vote. And as I understand it, we've actually never had a weighted vote. We go to the next slide, please. Thank you. As with the first slide, this is just a clarification pointing out that the chair of the CAC does not contribute to calculating quorum for this body, which of course is an important question. Next slide, please. A very clear addition here that the chair shall appoint board members to committee assignments. Once again, this has been our practice. This is simply reflecting that. Next slide, please. This slide reflects what this board has already addressed this evening in terms of the CAC guide. This simply aligns or confirms that the JPA will not conflict with the CAC guide and vice versa. And last slide, please, Raisa. This is a clarification of the appointment process, when, where, and it provides a little bit more flexibility to the board. And that is the entire proposed change.
Great. Thank you for that summary. Appreciate that. We are going to start with my colleagues who are attending virtually. Are there any questions from my colleagues on Zoom with respect to the proposed amendments to the joint powers agreement? See no hands raised. In the room, do we have any questions? Yes, Member Trio.
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to clarify functionally on quorum. Does that mean if a jurisdiction has not yet appointed or is in the interim between appointments of a director, that would count against quorum?
I think fundamentally, yes. So if a member jurisdiction had not appointed a director, we would still require it would not lower the number of directors required for quorum, correct?
Okay, any other questions in the room? I was going to just turn to our chair, CAC Chair Ed Hernandez, to see if he had no comments or questions at this time. Okay. All right. So we are going to turn to public comment. Do we have any public comment on this item?
Yes, we have one online. Jim Lutz, you're recognized for 2 minutes. Jim Lutz, you're recognized for 2 minutes. They put down their hand.
Okay, so we don't have any speakers in the room. We don't have any hands raised currently on Zoom, and I don't see any hands raised at a remote location for public comment on this item.
Sorry, Chair. Hands just went back up. We have 2 public comments.
Okay.
Jim Lutz, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Now I got the unmute button. It's a minor, not a minor issue, but a very quick fix. The CAC guideline is not listed in the key documents, and it's I don't think it's even listed in the JPA. So since it's the same sort of document describing how the CAC operates, it should at least be up on the key documents webpage. And that's all.
Thank you.
Okay, next speaker, please.
Miki Souza, you're recognized for, they put down their hand right now. So we have no public comment online anymore.
Okay, so we are closing public comment. I don't know if staff wants to respond to the clarification request. I wasn't 100% sure, but go ahead.
Sure, I'm happy to. The JPA does make reference to the CC guide now, so I just want to be clear that that is explicitly referenced here, and that the intent there was to have, an overarching document that elaborates more as opposed to putting it in the JPA itself. And as the board knows, in the consent agenda this evening, the board approved a CC guideline, so that will go online now that that's approved. So yeah.
Okay, so this is an action item. I'm looking at my colleagues to see if we have any comments at this time or if anyone wants to make a motion.
So moved, Pleasanton.
Member Balch has made a motion. Do we have a second? Member Roche has seconded. Let's go ahead and proceed to a roll call vote.
Alameda County,
Aye.
Albany,
Yep.
Berkeley,
Aye.
Dublin,
Aye.
Emeryville,
Aye.
Fremont,
Aye.
Hayward, Lathrop, Livermore, Newark,
Aye.
Oakland,
Aye.
Pleasanton,
Aye.
San Joaquin County,
Yes.
Stockton,
Yes.
Tracy,
Yes.
Union City,
Aye.
San Leandro,
Aye.
Piedmont.
Aye.
The item is moved.
Wonderful.
Thank
So
you,
that,
everyone.
thank you. That closes out agenda item number 13. We are moving on to agenda item number 14, which is 2026 financial adjustments, including value proposition. This is an action item and will be presented by our CEO, Howard Chang.
Great. Great, thank you, Vice. So this is a brief agenda of what we'll cover tonight. Obviously, we have discussed this already, though it is a substantive item. I'll probably take about 20 minutes for the presentation and certainly expect active discussion on it as well. You can go to the next slide, please. So just really quick recap on a couple of things. As part of the June budget setting process that we do mid-year for the fiscal period, mid-year to mid-year, we introduced some elements here. So we previewed some of the PCI reform, electricity rates, and financial impacts going into 2026. We have, of course, in October, as earlier noted, we received an October era filing from PG&E that really sets updated numbers for what 2026 PCI and rate numbers will look like. Those numbers will get finalized as part of what is called the AET, or the Annual Energy True-Up, which is anticipated here shortly, and that will really finalize the numbers going into January. We do not anticipate any material adjustments from what we've seen in the October filing. So for decision-making purposes today, this should be very reliable. We did present this topic already in the November board meeting. We also presented a topic related to value proposition change at the December XCOM. And now we are seeking approval on a set of actions that staff is presenting and making a recommendation on. A really key point that I will continually emphasize throughout this presentation is, while this does present some financial challenges for our agency looking ahead, it's all in the context of reducing our customer generation rates by 25 to 30% going into 2026. So as we have been talking about affordability challenges here over the last several years, this is really the best way to meet that challenge, is to help lower rates. And in order to lower rates, we of course have to talk about how do we manage our own finances. Next slide. So with that in mind, a couple quick items for context. When we finalized our 24-25 fiscal year, we actualized with a budget surplus of approximately $130 million. So this current fiscal year that ended in the middle of 2025 was a very strong year. As we look at the second half of the calendar year, it also continues to look strong. But when you combine that with the forecast for calendar year 2026, that's where we see a deficit of approximately $250 million. We'll go into that. In the November board meeting, in order to address that, we specifically requested two actions. One was to allocate 100% of the budget surplus to the rate stabilization fund. That would have made changes to the allocation of 10% to on-bill credits. And we made a recommendation to reduce local development funds by $10 million in non-earmarked funding. At that last board meeting, we didn't take motion or action on either of these items. The board did provide direction to move forward on value proposition changes, however. So just wanted a quick recap of what occurred last meeting. Next slide, please. So we presented this slide before, but I am going to cover it again because I think it's a really important slide to put this all into quantitative context. This shows our historic rates over the last 8 years or so. The orange bar is AVA's generation rates. The yellow bar is PCIA. And then the blue bar is equivalent to the Bright Choice discount or the PG&E premium relative to Bright Choice. You can see in the 2022 to 2025 period, prices were quite elevated. And as you look at 2026, that's where you're seeing a material reduction. So generation rates, which are inclusive of both PCIA and AVA's Bright Choice generation costs, are going down about 32% between 25 and 26. When you look at just the orange portion of the bar, or AVA's generation portion, that's going down by nearly 50%. So these are really, really material drops in those rates. In context, of course, our generation rates are only a portion of the bill. For residential customers, it's 30 to 40% of the bill. T&D, transmission and distribution, or your delivery charges that PG&E continues to provide, that's the larger share of the bill. That is projected to go up by about 4% between 25 and 26. And because it is a larger portion of that bill, overall, we are anticipating electricity bills to go down by about 11% when you're taking into account delivery charges and generation charges. So I want to break that all down. We know that it's difficult to really decipher a bill. It's something that we work on with our customers to try to improve education, understanding as much as we can. Those bills are complicated. We know that. So we want to break down those various pieces. What we touch, of course, is the generation portion. So we're going to continue to emphasize that sort of 30% reduction that we're forecasting. But we want to educate across the broader context to make sure that our customers understand what's happening. And there, of course, there's another portion of the bill that we don't touch on at all, which is the gas portion of the bill that PG&E provides, right? There's a whole nother component outside of electricity that they are providing services on that go up or go down. That's pretty meaningful in terms of overall bill impacts to customers. I think that's it there. If you can go to the next slide, please. So this is a breakdown of the numbers. We showed this before. I'll just update. I'll provide updates on what is new here. One, the net number of $250 million is adjusted a little bit. It was $247 million before. It's $250 million now. Nothing's materially changed, but we did take out an OpEx reduction from this table so as to include it in the following tables of what actions that staff are taking. So that's just one adjustment I wanted to call out. The other addition to this slide is we've added 2 columns, 2027 and 2028 here. This was not previously provided. These are high-level estimates. Obviously, as you go further out in the future, it's harder and harder to predict where energy prices will go. But we felt like it was important to provide this for context. There were questions that came from the board in terms of what does the longer-term outlook look like. And so what we want to show here is when you look at total net revenues, 2027 is about negative $10 million. 2028 is about $13 million. So really the point is this is relatively flat. We're not anticipating major contributions to reserves or rate stabilization fund. But additionally, we're also not forecasting a major deficit for those years. Of course, numbers will actualize differently, I have no doubt. So I expect these numbers will change, but from a high level, I think they're reliable for these purposes. The last thing I'll just note is in the very top right, you'll see in red, in very fine print there, right? The 2028 numbers do not include any PCI Track 2 potential impacts. We know that's being regulated right now. That's going to go under a proceeding in 26 and 27 to determine any additional PCI reform that may take place. Whatever does happen, we anticipate to be implemented in 2028. This number does not include that. So it does have some potential impact that we're seeing in similar magnitude to what we're seeing in 2026. It's hard to forecast at this stage, so we have not included any particular assumptions, but just know that there's some risk on the horizon there. It's not incorporated in that number. Okay, next slide, please. This is just a really quick summary of what presented in November. We didn't really make any changes here. The board generally provided direction to continue forward with the on-bill credit, so you can see that sort of stricken from this list. You can go to the next slide. So this is the really important slide. I'll spend a little bit of time on this one. So the way that staff has approached this is we've laid out 3 different scenarios for the board to consider to take action to address the forecasted deficit. We've broken that down into scenarios A, B, and C. They all include similar actions or measures that the board can consider taking, but you can see sort of different gradients of how extensive we want to get in each of those categories. The very first line item is utilization of the rate stabilization fund. That is consistent across the board. The recommendation is to use the full rate stabilization fund of $150 million. So no change between the scenarios on that particular action. And that's the only one that really doesn't have any differences across the scenarios. The next one is adjustments to our value proposition. And so each of those, there are some modest sort of stair-step differences there. And so for Bright Choice, for scenario A, we're recommending it's at a 0% discount. So that would be at parity with PG&E. Scenario B is at a 0.5% discount, and scenario C is at a 1% discount. And then for the R100 renewable 100 premium, that's at a 1.75 cent per kilowatt hour premium for scenario A, 1.5 cent premium for scenario B, and 1.25 cent premium for scenario C. And then you can see the underlying impacts to revenue for each of those scenarios at ranging between $51 and $71 million. So those would be sort of contributions to our revenue that would help to offset deficit. So that's that line item. And then we have the renewable energy procurement reduction, $5, $10, and $15 million reductions. We have different percentage renewable energy reductions that for each of those. I will cover each of these line items in a little bit more detail in further slides. So this is just a summary for right now. The next line item is the local development fund reduction. Similarly, we have broken that up into reductions of $5, $10, or $15 million. This is all for unearmarked funding, so it doesn't cut any particular program or service that we have forecast for today. The next line item after that is operating expenditure reduction. That's ranging from $2.5 to $4.5 million. Those are smaller numbers, but know that our OpEx is generally a fairly small percentage of our overall annual expenditures. OpEx right now is only about 5% of our overall annual expenditures. So these numbers kind of range between 5 and 10%. So they are still pretty meaningful from a percentage basis. The last one here is reserves. That's a little bit of a plug of whatever is left over. So in scenario A, we in fact have a little bit of buffer. So you can see the cumulative value adds up to $255 million with a forecasted deficit of $250 million. So in that scenario, we are forecasting that we don't need to utilize anything from reserves. Scenario B, we are forecasting utilization of $15 million. In scenario C, we forecast utilization of $35 million. There is a slide later that talks about additional risks that we face in the market. There's always energy market volatility that we face. Numbers will actualize differently. So whatever scenario that we choose here, there is a recommendation to add a buffer of incremental authorization of reserves. So for example, scenario B, if we were to authorize scenario B as the action from the board, we are requesting authorization for up to $30 million of reserves. I estimate that we will need to use $15 million, but I want a little bit of additional buffer of $15 million to help manage incremental risk. So that's the way we've approached it. Now, with all of that said, staff recommendation is to go with scenario B. We think that's a good middle ground. That's sort of pulling a little bit from every area in order to help address the deficit and the financial needs. Below the table, you'll see there are a few bullet points of other possible adjustments. This list, unfortunately, is fairly limited. There's not too much action that we can take beyond what we've already provided. And so we just wanted to list out a few other things that the board may want to consider, but they're not part of the staff recommendation currently. Those are things like additional sensitivities around any of these measures. We could put Bright Choice at a premium to PG&E. We could talk about sale of some assets that AVA has. And then we have reduction or elimination of bill credits, which have already surfaced from last board meeting. Okay, with that, I'm going to jump into some more detailed slides on each of these items, though I will move quickly. The first is rate stabilization fund. So already as noted, that's $150 million in each of the scenarios. So there really is no difference across the three scenarios, but we did want to just make sure that we were providing the full balances there for what we have currently in our rate stabilization fund of just shy of $150 million. And then what we have there for on-bill credits as well, which is a little bit over $13 million. We are seeking authorization for me to use the full rate stabilization fund in the calendar year of 2026. Next slide, please. Next set of slides is all related to value proposition. So this slide first is talking about process. Anytime that AVA makes a value proposition adjustment, we have a pretty rigorous process to make sure to notice that, hold public workshops, receive public commentary, provide that back to the board so that you are aware of that comment as you're making any decisions to adjust our value proposition. We did do the 2 online webinars on November 25th and December 4th. Those were not particularly well attended. They oftentimes are not, but we did properly notice them. We did have some attendees. We have received some written comment as well. It's very, very limited. The summary of that is just a general request to see lower electricity rates. And there was a comment around reconsidering use of new clean energy sources if they're more expensive than previous technology. So nothing too material there to really flag, but all of that material has been provided for full transparency to our board as part of the board package. The presentation for that webinar was also included. Next slide. So these are the 3 scenarios that we've laid out for value proposition adjustments. I briefly ran over those before, so I won't read those again, but these are what you can see in terms of Bright Choice and Renewable 100 and what that contribution is to addressing the financial deficit. Next slide, please. This is a bigger sensitivity table. We did provide this previously just to show what that would look like if we wanted to make different types of adjustments, going from, for example, on the table all the way to the left, the blue heading, that is the Bright Choice discount, right? So anywhere from a 4% discount to a 1% premium, what would that look like? For the green table for R100, going from a half-cent premium to a 1.75-cent premium. And the table to the right really just adds up from the various columns in those 2 other tables. One thing I'll just note here is that given the anticipated higher percentage of clean energy, Bright Choice could be considered to be set at a premium to PG&E. I know that that was something that the board has commented on, a lot of hesitation there. That is not part of the staff recommendation either. But I do want to note that other CCAs have done that at various times in the past, and certainly a number of CCAs are considering that for 2026 in light of sort of the financial squeeze that they're experiencing. And many see that as justifiable given that the power content of those products is greener than PG&E's, in addition to the different types of services and value that they're bringing. Next slide, please. This is a slide added. There was a question around, is there a comparable product that PG&E offers relative to Renewable 100? The short answer is no. The closest thing would be something called the PG&E Solar Choice. That is a product that is no longer open to customers. It was closed as of December 2021. I don't believe that product is able to service additional customers just based off of the amount of megawatt hours that they have available there. And that premium has fluctuated year to year historically, or I should say today, it's between 3 and 7 cents as a premium. So it is quite significant. It's higher than what the R100 premium is. So we just wanted to provide that for some comparison. Next slide, please. We provided this detail before. I think the real point that I'll emphasize here is that when rates are higher, AVA's value proposition or discount to PG&E has increased. And when rates are lower, our value proposition or discount has decreased. And so we fluctuate between 1% and 5% historically. What we're talking about now is a recommendation to go to half a cent. So that would be the smallest discount that we've offered relative to PG&E historically. With that said, the rates are also the lowest they've ever been historically. So we are mostly consistent with how we've approached that. When times are tough and rates are high and bills are hard or bills are high, we try to provide a larger discount and vice versa. Next slide, please. So how does this all boil down into actual rate numbers? That's really important, right? So when we look at the column all the way to the left, 2025 rates right now for Bright Choice customers are around 14 cents. For Renewable 100 customers, it's around 15 cents. Now, this is an average rate. You're not going to see this on your bill because this is averaging the actual load profile of your sort of average residential customer. And it's looking at time of use, which is looking at seasonal changes, hourly changes, and you blend it all together. So, but this is what it comes out to for an average load profile for our customers. When you look at scenarios A, B, and C and what we're recommending, let's just focus on scenario B, which is that middle orange column. That's what we're recommending. You can see that if you drop the Bright Choice discount to 0.5% and you increase the R100 premium to 1.5 cents, Bright Choice average residential rate will be about 10 cents, and the R100 average rate will be 11.63 cents. Those translate to a 29% and nearly a 24% reduction, respectively, year over year. So these are really significant. And when you look across scenarios A, B, and C, you can see those numbers are not very meaningfully different when you talk about somewhere between a 0 and 1% discount, or a 1.25 to 1.75%, 1.75 cent premium. But what you can see, of course, is they're very meaningful reductions from where they are today in 2025. And of course, this is inclusive of PCIA. So this is sort of all in generation costs are really coming down meaningfully in 2026. Okay, next slide. So that's it on value proposition. Let me move on to renewable energy procurement reductions. So in the three scenarios we've laid out, a reduction of $5, $10, and $15 million, and that translates to percentage reductions of renewable energy procurement by about 4.4%, 8.4%, and 10.7%. And you can see what the resulting renewable energy and we say carbon-free or equivalent to large hydropower content in that third row there. Now, there's a couple complicating factors I want to make sure to highlight just so we can digest these numbers. We have a board-approved schedule to get to 100% clean by 2030. Right now, the 2026 target is 81% for renewable energy and large hydro. For 2027, it's 85%. Those are part of the board-adopted sort of schedule to get there. As a reminder, the board approved a compliance period procurement methodology recently, which allowed us some flexibility for variable intermittent resources. So that allows us to utilize excess procurements for certain years in other years over a period of time. So the current sort of compliance period procurement that we're in is 2024 to 2027. We have excess procurements from 2024 and 2025 of around 15%. So that's kind of laid out on this slide. 7.3% renewable energy, 8% large hydro. So we can utilize those excess volumes from what we procured in 24 and 25 in the 26 and 27 periods. That doesn't require board authorization or action. Those are things that allow staff to operate with a little bit more flexibility given the intermittent nature of the resources that we procure. So that will get incorporated by staff decision in 26 and 27. But what we are requesting is to reduce the 81 and the 85%, or really the 81% target number by these percentages in the table. The resulting number is different than just taking 81% minus what's in the table because we have the compliance period excess volumes. So that's what I wanted to highlight because the numbers may seem a little confusing there as a result. We may come back to that because I'm seeing some confused looks and I can appreciate that. Maybe I'll just make it a point to re-articulate that. So we're asking for scenario B to be able to reduce the board approved target of 81% by 8.4%. So that would be 81% minus 8.4%. That's really what the new board mandate would be for 2026. You're not going to see that number as the resulting power content label number, most likely, because we also have excess procurement that we've made in prior years. So we can, without board authorization, already lower some of the procurement levels that we have in 2026. That was the purpose of the compliance period procurement methodology previously. So it gives us that flexibility as is. We are asking for something incremental to that in order to achieve some savings from an expense perspective. Next slide. This is a breakdown of what the power content label is anticipated to look like if the board approves any of the actions from scenarios A, B, or C. Again, if we're going to focus on scenario B, as that is the staff recommendation, that's what the power content will look like in terms of the breakdown of renewable energy, hydro, nuclear, unspecified, et cetera, and the GHG emissions associated with that. So that's a snapshot of that. Okay, I'll move on from there. Next slide is related to local development budget reduction. Again, scenarios A, B, and C have different degrees of reduction, 5, 10, and $15 million in total. In all scenarios, this funding is coming from unearmarked programs, so we're not making any recommendations to cutting any specific programs or services. With that said, you can kind of see where that gets broken down. So the first row is $4 million that's included in the current fiscal year. So that's the 25-26 fiscal year, which included $4 million for future roadmap programs. Those are not defined programs yet to be planned for in the future. And so we wanted to set aside some money in this year's budget for that. So that's the first $4 million. The next row is unearmarked funds that are in the existing local development fund. So this is previously allocated funding, of which we have about $110 million, of which about $10 million is unearmarked. So we have different amounts that are being reduced from sort of that allocation. The last one is in scenario A, you can see there's another $1.5 million in order to get to that $15 million level, is cost reductions achieved through efficiencies and program effectiveness. So for most of our programs that we go and execute on, we have some level of savings because we're trying to save money with the consultant we're using, some administrative costs. Perhaps a program wasn't effective or successful, so we closed it down just a little earlier. So there is savings that we see through our programs through those means, and some incremental dollars that that are therefore unearmarked as a result of that. So that's what makes up those three different scenarios. Okay, next slide, please. This is a summary of the OpEx reduction. One thing I'll just highlight really quickly is in last month's presentation, we already incorporated some OpEx reductions of about $3.5 million. As I noted earlier, I put that back into the earlier slide because we wanted to make sure that we actually called that out and that could vary that number. So scenario B is where we're making a recommendation to reduce by about $3.5 million. That's over 7% of our OpEx, a pretty meaningful adjustment. Our overall OpEx, as I noted, is fairly small. It's only about 5% of our annual expenditures. Scenario B doesn't cut specific priorities or workflows that we had been planning on. It's just trying to eke out every efficiency that we can, or removes a bunch of contingencies, things like that. Whereas scenario A actually starts to cut some workflows. So it's not my recommendation to go with scenario A, but there are some things that are call it more optional side of things that we could cut if we wanted to. The other thing I'll just say is in all scenarios, we still have some contingency funds. It's fairly limited, but we have some for, say, litigation, right? There's a lot of uncertainty if litigation will happen. And we have some not immaterial funds going towards litigation efforts that we want to ensure that we can cover if we need to. But there's a good chance that we would not spend that this fiscal year anyways, just because litigation doesn't actually move forward in this particular timeframe. Those tend to be pretty slow moving processes. So I just want to highlight that. Okay, next section is on reserves. I'm going to briefly touch on that. So this is just a snippet of some information related to our reserve policy and our rate stabilization fund policy. The top section shows the waterfall of working capital, rate stabilization fund, credit facility, and reserve funds. Those are things that we've previously presented to the board. So we just wanted to represent that to make sure that wording was there and available. The way we've characterized the utilization of reserve funds is it is intended for financial strength base layer, set aside and used only in a case of extremely dire emergencies and with board approval. So it's intended to be used in limited circumstances. The second half of the slide, use of reserves versus line of credit. We wanted to put this on there because there were specific questions that were asked last board meeting about this. The cost to draw on the line of credit is approximately 4.45%. What we've budgeted in terms of anticipated interest rate for our own investment management is about 3%. I think in actuality, that number is coming in a little higher, maybe closer to 4%. Regardless, it is still lower than our cost to draw. So we would generally recommend we utilize reserves as opposed to utilize line of credit, and we maintain the line of credit for additional liquidity purposes. That is not something that technically requires board approval to draw on the line of credit. That's typically a staff decision on trying to make that optimization, but I just wanted to sort of call out what we're assuming there. I think that's it for that slide. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit more detail on the reserve numbers. So our current balance is $330 million. That's the top row in the table. The next row shows our forecasted operating expenditures for the next few years. you can see that number is growing. That number is growing from just about $900 million to just about $960 million. That growth is mostly because we're serving unincorporated San Joaquin County. So higher load, higher expenses. That's why that's there. The next layer of growth that gets us over $1 billion is mostly driven by electrification. So increased transportation electrification, building electrification, et cetera, as well as forecasted data center load. I think there's a lot of uncertainty as to whether that materializes. Some of that, I would say roughly half of that, I think we feel more confident about. And the other half probably is far more uncertain. That's certainly not assuming all the data center load materializes that we are seeing in front of us. It's a fairly small percentage of that, but even that, I think we agree is highly uncertain. The percentages there, then look at the reserves as of OPEX. You can see it kind of goes from 37% to 30%, even without any adjustments to the actual reserve balance or any utilization of the reserves. And then the last three rows show the what the percentages are for our target of 50% and our min and max of 25 to 75%. So what those numbers look like. Okay, next table. This kind of just goes into if we do authorize utilization of the reserves for the amounts that we highlighted in the different scenarios, this is what the percentages would drop to. So you can see in scenario B, it would go to about 35%. And then in the outer years, get a little below 30%. Next slide, please. All right, we're rounding the bend in the next few slides here. So this slide is the highlight risk. With all of the numbers that we provided as estimates and as a forecast, of course, we know that there's still a lot of uncertainty with how numbers will actualize. That is always the case. There's always energy markets volatility that we experience. This is trying to quantify that at a high level for you. In the first row, we see what we've labeled sort of generically geopolitical event or enduring impact. So this is something like we experienced a few years back where there was invasion of Ukraine and we saw significant elevation in natural gas prices for the year. We saw Winter Storm Uri, significant natural gas usage in other parts of the country and huge natural gas spikes. So something like that has an impact like this. One standard deviation is about $85 million in energy expenses, two standard deviations being about $170 million. So that's just trying to show you sort of order of magnitude wise, what is the impact that you would experience from highly elevated prices across the board throughout the year because of some major market disruption. The next two lines are more modest in impact, a very cold winter or a very hot summer. And you can see how that sort of quantifies roughly $15 to $30 million or $30 to $60 million. We have not seen record temperatures over the last couple of summers. So temperatures have actually been pretty mild, and that's part of what's driving lower rates going into 2026. That does not mean that 2026 will not hit a record heat wave or drought conditions or something like that. So these are the types of figures that we want to make sure to highlight from a risk perspective. I noted specifically earlier, whatever scenario the board elects to choose and whatever level that the board is comfortable with in terms of utilizing, in terms of risks, in terms of utilizing reserves, we need to account for some level of risk and buffer above that. So in scenario B, which is what we're recommending, it is an estimate of utilizing $15 million in reserves, but I'm requesting authorization to use up to $30 million. So that's the most modest line item here of $15 million added to that for some form of buffer. Anything above that, I would come back to the board for authorization to utilize if needed. Okay, next slide. This is the second to last slide. I just wanted to give a really quick snapshot of what our territory looks like. As you're sitting here, obviously thinking about the communities and the cities and the counties that you all represent. Obviously, these are not easy decisions that we're asking you to make in terms of adjustments to our finances in order to address the financial need here. And it's important that you're, of course, thinking about what are the value and services and things that your constituents care about and think about. So our population is about over 2 million people that we serve here within AVA. It's about 750,000 accounts. 61% of that load is non-residential. So that's commercial, industrial, and municipal. And about 39% is residential. So the majority of our load is C&I oriented. 10% of our load is care and fair. So qualified, sort of formally designated low income. Certainly beyond that, I think we would say that there are additional income qualified that may qualify for Care and Fair that are not enrolled or are low income, but maybe not qualified, but that's what's formally under Care and Fair. 70% of our load is on Bright Choice, and 30% is on Renewable 100. We retain about 95% of our customers in load. And of course, we do operate in a quasi-competitive environment with PG&E. I think that's that there. And get to the next slide, which is the last slide. So this is an eye chart. This is scenario B, which is staff's recommendation. So this is the same six items that we had presented in the earlier slide where we showed scenarios A, B, and C. I'm not going to walk through all of these details. I think we've talked about them enough in the presentation itself. What we've shown here is the adjustment that we're recommending under the scenario B column. And we did add in what is the net result, right? So if we utilize the full rate stabilization, $150 million, net result, zero remains. Value proposition, $62 million roughly. That results in a generation rate reduction of between 24 and 29% relative to 2025. REC procurement reduction is $10 million. That would reduce the board-approved target of 81% for large hydro and renewable energy to 73% roughly. The local development budget reduction of $10 million would take that fund to about $92 million in total. Operating expenditures of $3.5 million reduction would mean our total overhead operating expenditures around $48 million. And the lastly is reserves of $15 to $30 million. Again, the estimate is that we'll utilize $15 million, but I'm asking for authorization for up to $30 million. In that case, we would have remaining between $300 and $350 million reserves. We currently have $330 million in total. Okay, I know that was a lengthy presentation, and that wraps it up.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate all the information that is in here. I think because of the complex nature of the questions and discussion that we're going to have as a board, I think I'll do public comment first. So if there are folks in the room who would like to make a public comment, please line up now so I can see that you're wanting to make a public comment. Thank you so much. And let's proceed with public comment in the room.
I'll try to ask my questions in the 2 minutes you have. If you want to ask me more, I'll be happy to take them. My name is Ron Perry. I'm CEO and founder of an energy company started in 1994. The company started in 97. We've been in the energy business since 94, Commercial Energy of Oakland, California. That's our sign you see right by the airport. I'm going to ask these in the spirit of transparency because as board members, I don't think you know enough to make decisions on this. What's been presented to you is a clip of $300 million problem that is as if it exists tomorrow. It does not. There's a cash flow forecast that has to eviscerate itself over the next 12 months. Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Mills, Mr. Chang used to be the CFO of this organization. All know how to do that. You didn't get to see that today. I think they need to provide a monthly cash flow forecast that shows how, given this decline in rates, how it will get to 300 million or 200 million at some point in the future before you make any decision. In terms of specific questions, the graph on pricing dropping down, what it didn't show was what was the cost of the energy to meet that load. In other words, when you were at 14 cents for 3 years after COVID, COVID crashed prices. Prices jumped up. I'm very familiar with this. What was the cost of energy that you bought? Well, it was less than 14 cents. That's why you accumulated $350 million. Now it's 11 cents or 8 cents. Well, what's your cost of electricity this coming year? You didn't get to see that. When those two paths crossed, that's what's causing your cash flow shortage in the next 12 months. You kind of got to know that. Second, you don't know when you change these rates how much of the 30% of your renewable 100s will continue at renewable 100. What if 20% of them drop? By the same token, number three, and I'll go, I'm 2 minutes are up.
Your 2 minutes are up.
If
Thank
I'm
you so much for
can I
sharing.
finish my
No,
last question?
I'm afraid I'm not able to
About
do that.
61% of the load
I'm
that
sorry,
you didn't show pricing.
sir, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
if
Thank
you don't
you.
want my help, I understand.
I know, I appreciate it, but we need to move on.
I understand.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next speaker, please.
Hi, Chirag.
I was just looking at the basic numbers. One point that came out to the staff recommendation in the scenario 1 and scenario A and scenario B. In scenario B, they did not include the efficiencies, and I would request why is it not included, the 1.5 million. It's a small number, but again, it's still a valuable number, and that could be added in scenario B as well. All right, that's my short comment.
Thank you so much for your comment. I do not see anyone else in the room. So do we have any hands raised online?
No hands currently raised online.
Okay, and do we have, if I could look at my colleagues do we have any hands raised at any of our remote locations? I do not see any hands raised at our remote locations, so I'm going ahead and closing public comment. Bring this back to the board for discussion. So we're going to do this in two parts. First is kind of the question and answer. And if anybody wants to ask a question that was asked by a member of the public, that's totally fine. But because this is a very meaty topic, what I would ask is when I call on one of my colleagues, please ask just up to 2 questions, and then we'll move on to a different member of the board. And we can always circle back. Like if you have 10 questions and other board members don't ask those same questions, we can absolutely come back to you. But I just want to kind of keep the discussion moving, given the complex nature of this. So we're going to go ahead and start online. Do we have any members online that have any questions at this time about the very meaty materials before us? And it's okay. I will come back if you don't have any questions at this time. Oh, I have member Marquez.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I appreciate all of the work, the presentation. Just to kind of piggyback on the first person that made public comments, I am struggling with being locked into scenario B. So can staff just speak to, is there any other consideration as to us tracking our revenue and any alternative paths to kind of address the concerns at how we're not tracking the cost and just I'm just struggling with having to commit to this. So if staff can address the public comments that were made.
Great, thank you.
Sure, I'm happy to speak that. Of course, we track our cash flows and expenses on a monthly basis. So I don't think it's correct to characterize that we're not tracking them. It's not presented in this particular forecast, and if that's of interest to the board, we can certainly provide that. But naturally, we're going to be tracking this. We always track our finances very closely on a monthly basis, and we also release quarterly financials for board's review, both reviewed at FAP as well as provided to the board on consent. So tonight's actually has Q1 of the fiscal years right in the consent itself for review. It's not, whether that's the right level of detail that the board seeks. We're happy to enhance things for visibility as you would want to see. In terms of locking things in, I do want to clarify. Some things are locked in, some things are not necessarily locked in, right? These are the things that we'll track and work on throughout the course of the year. For example, utilization of $150 million of rate stabilization fund, we're not going to use that until we hit an actual deficit period. So as if you recall, for this particular fiscal year, we were forecasting around a $35 million deficit, and the board provided authorization to use our rate stabilization fund for the fiscal year in that amount. What we're now is adding in a forecast of the next 6 months. We think it's prudent to look forward further. What I don't want to do is only look at this particular fiscal year and ignore the fact that the next fiscal year hasn't begun yet, and therefore not have this discussion, this very important discussion with the board. Rather, it's important to actually look out further, especially when you're seeing such a significant deficit period, is to forecast that, have meaningful and active discussion with our board to talk through those details and talk about taking actions as soon as possible. I don't think it's prudent to wait until that happens and then request actions be taken to address those needs. Some of those things, such as the value proposition, obviously you need to do that throughout the time frame. If you wait until you hit a deficit and then you try to adjust your value proposition, you're simply not going to accumulate meaningful changes to revenue to address the need. You have to do that ahead of time. And it makes sense to do that ahead of time when you're seeing rate changes that are occurring that would justify that, which would be January of 2026. We're not making that recommendation, of course, for some period of time in 2025. Rates are high. It wouldn't have made sense. So and so value proposition may be something that you would consider to be locked in. Of course, if the board can make a change on value proposition proposition in the future to the extent that numbers materialize differently. We, of course, are going to track this closely and inform the board if there's an ability to adjust things, to improve things. Other line items, again, whether you want to consider them locked in or not, I'm not sure, but reserves we're not going to utilize until absolutely needed, and that would be later on, probably the back half of next calendar year. And things like renewable energy procurement, that does need to get locked in. You need the period of the year to make those adjustments. You can't wait till, say, I'm just going to pick the fall of next year and say, okay, now we want to reduce our procurement levels. You only got 3 months left in the year. You cannot sell backwards looking energy. That is not allowed. That would be an unbundled REC. It would be a different type of energy product. So you have to do that ahead of time with good planning involved. Local development budget technically is more nimble, right? Because these are funds that have already been set aside in local development. So whether you release it now or you release it later, technically you have a little bit of flexibility there. In operating expenditures, again, the number is fairly small, so it kind of depends on when we might see those savings, whether it's locked in or not.
Thank you. And then my last question is, do we know other local CCAs, what their reserve policy is, what level they're at in terms of percentage?
We've presented that in the past. We did a very thorough benchmarking of all the CCAs, what their policies are, what their levels are at. So we've presented that. I don't remember the month exactly, but we've presented that a couple of times. We also presented that with the rate stabilization fund policy itself for those that have that type of a fund. Most CCAs are taking similar actions to what we're talking about here today.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other online attendees, board members who have a question at this time? As I said, I will come back because I understand questions may emerge as we move forward here. So I'm looking now at my colleagues in the room, member Sakakihara.
Thank you. I have one question. Can we pull up the slide? I think it's slide 23 in our packet, but it's the one on the risk. And I can start the question. My high level understanding is basically AVA's expenses are less elastic than prices because of some of the long-term contracts that we have. So we're less exposed. So as prices increase, I think on the slide you mentioned, right, obviously that's when we have more financial headroom, although there is the point about potential cash flow risk in that scenario because of the timing of when the true up happens. And so it seems to me the events that are in the table, it's very helpful to see those, but that those primarily have to do with increases. And so I'm thinking of this scenario in the fourth bullet, right, where it's actually decreases in energy prices that would be great for our customer base or the residents, but, would then put even more of a squeeze. Did you have a sense of, what are things that might lead to that kind of scenario, and what is the range for that down? I don't want to say downside, but for the decreasing prices scenario, right? Because the table does focus primarily on the increasing prices.
Yeah, it's a great question. Couple things. You maybe two areas I'll try to address in your question. The first one, you notice that our prices may not be as elastic as what we sort of experience in the market. And one point I want to make there is that when you think about our hedging practices, we've been layering on hedges since we've launched as an agency. Our intention is to cost average over time. We are not trying to beat the market. We would make no claim that we have an ability to do that, right? We are trying to be disciplined and have good risk management processes that allow us to hedge over time across all of our variety of energy products in order to meet our load. And so in a rising price environment, your rates go up and your PCI goes down, and we have significant operating headroom. We've also been putting on hedges in low cost periods or lower cost periods, and therefore have a lot of in the money hedges. So the last few years, we've been contributing a lot to reserves and rate stabilization fund, and obviously operating in a very healthy environment. Unfortunately, that's also when our customers have experienced really high rates, given our indexing structure to PG&E. In a falling price environment is where you have lower rates and you have higher PCI, which in and of itself creates a squeeze on our operating headroom. But then you layer into the fact that we've been putting on hedges over the last 3-4 years in a high priced environment. So we have a lot of out of the money hedges in that scenario. Now, we also have some older dated in the money hedges. So it's not as if everything's out of the money. But obviously the last 3-4 years, there's been a concentration of high priced out of the money hedges. And so that puts 2026 in particular in a period where we're squeezed. That's why we uniquely see this deficit that we're forecasting and the need to manage that. It's not an overall super scary thing when you look at the broader context. You always have to look over a multi-year period and think about you have hedges that are in the money and out of money and they're balanced out. You have to think about prices going up and prices going down and be able to weather that volatility. And that's what we're looking to do here. Fortunately, we have strong reserves and rate stabilization fund to allow us to do that. Ultimately, if you want to see rates go down, this is what has to happen. Rates go down, your revenues go down. You have to be able to manage that through a transition period. Ideally, you'd like to see that happen over a multi-year period in a more gradual way. This is obviously much of it happening all at once in 2026. Those are the circumstances. The second part of your question is about what is the risk and have we measured the extent that we will be able to weather sort of a reduction in prices because of what that does financially. Yes, we have, of course, and we have also incorporated uniquenesses into our risk management practices that account for that. So we utilize the PCIA as a hedge within our portfolio. So legacy resources that PG&E has that will go up or down depending on market conditions is something that we've incorporated into our portfolio as a proxy hedge. And so that means we have extra exposure in our portfolio to the market to account for that. And what I mean by that is because our methodology indexes to PG&E, when rates go down, PCIA goes up. We intentionally index our rates to PG&E because we know that customers ultimately face for their generation costs the combination of Ava's generation rates and PCIA. It's not just our rates, unfortunately. As much as we'd love to just say we're going to set our rates a certain way and ignore the PCIA, that's part of their generation costs that they're going to pay if it's high or if it's low. So we actually want to try to incorporate that in terms of the overall generation costs and make sure that our energy risk management processes account for that, which means that when PCI goes up, we have an ability to weather that and more easily make our AVA generation rates go down. That's the short of it. But the point I want to make there is that we have room in our portfolio to account for that allows for additional fluctuation given our indexing methodology. The last part of your question is what happens though if prices decrease. So if prices do decline in 2026, generally speaking, that will lower our expenses in 2026, which would improve the financial forecast that we have here, lessen the deficit. But it would lower the rates further and increase PCI going into 2027, which presents some increased financial risk in future years. Because of what I noted, we have more exposure to the market. That means we have more that will get reduced because of those lower expenses. And that means that we can also cover a little bit more of that fluctuating in 2027. Not all of it, of course, but some of it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. I think the table was helpful in outlining, 1 to 2 standard deviations, but those are again for scenarios that might trigger price increases. It's like what in our imagination would trigger further decreases and what is the magnitude of them, given that in these scenarios, and you don't have to answer it, but that was kind of where I was coming from, is because bad winter, hot summer, and then these giant geopolitical, those actually are going to, although create cash flow issues, potentially in out years may actually create more operating headroom for AVA, right? Whereas it's the cheap prices scenario that puts us in a scenario where we have to even further rely on reserves in the future.
Yeah, and I should say this particular table is a fairly simplistic exercise to give you a general sense of the order of magnitude. It can swing both ways. We titled it bad winter, which would imply a cold winter and higher natural gas prices and therefore higher expenses for one standard deviation of $15 million. It could be a mild winter and it could be $15 million less as well because it's lower natural gas prices and therefore lower energy prices at the LMPs.
Oh, and that's what I was.
So it could swing. It can swing both ways.
Right, like a geopolitical. I don't know. You'd have to conjure one up, right? But that actually swings it as much but in the other direct, but yeah, that is helpful for at least the winter.
Yeah, and I'm just adding
Sorry,
real quick.
CFO wants to
Like a
interject
bad
here.
winter could be lots of precipitation, and that could mean big hydro for next year and have softer prices because of that.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Okay, I know Member Roche has a question.
Yeah, I just sort of on the, thank you. On the public speaker's comment about the sort of like monthly targets. I mean, I guess, just in doing municipal budgeting, we have to set a target, and I'm sort of taking your recommendation of scenario B as sort of a target. And to your point of, you won't use the rate stabilization fund until you actually need to get there. And it sounds like the reserves as well, right? And then other than that, I understand that we need to set the value proposition. And I guess if for some reason the scenario was sort of upside down and we ended up with, that there wasn't a huge savings for, the individual customer, we could always go back to on-bill credits, right? If prices went up, like if PG&E's forecast weren't true and prices went up and we saw more revenue, then we could do an on-bill credit, like kind of true up in a way, right? If it turns out that we sort of put that proposition down too low.
That's right. We always have the ability to do that.
Okay.
I'll be candid in saying that it's unlikely that would be my
yeah,
recommendation,
yeah.
in light of the risk that we're talking about. I think
Yeah.
we'll want to contribute back to rate stabilization fund.
Yeah.
But the short of it is, of course, the board has that ability. If numbers actualize quite differently, there's going to need to be discussion and action for what we want to do for, say, a surplus if we haven't utilized.
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I mean, just sort of to the point of sort of wanting to understand like why the public commenter about sort of understanding, what our power is to make sure we're really like serving the customers the right way.
Can I make one other comment too?
Yes, please.
I want to really, I guess, distinguish why we approached it this way. Last month, we tried to keep the set of actions fairly light. And I didn't ask for utilization of reserves. And I didn't even ask for utilization of the rate stabilization fund. It was really to say, these are the actions we needed to consider for immediate action, which was considering a reallocation of the on-bill credits and lowering of local development fund. And we'll track things and we'll talk to the board. And I think it was the board's interest not to move those items. This month, I am packaging up at sort of a set of actions that are necessary to address the risk.
Sure.
And to be fully transparent and direct, I am asking the board to take this action so that staff knows what tools we have available to actually manage this risk going in the future. Because in the absence of this, I don't know what we're doing. If we're tracking and trending in the way that we anticipate, I cannot wait until that happens and be left in a position of, well, I don't know what the board's going to want us to do. So then I will go bring this forward and see how they want to manage this. And if I knew this is exactly how you manage it, it's not the end of the world. But if I don't know that, then I'm left sort of blindly trying to operate.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think you have to have a plan and how we're going to move forward without having to come back to us every month. So I'm totally okay with that. And then my other question has to do around the renewable energy credit, the rec procurement reduction. If, the scenario is to go from 81% minus 8.4%. And I just wanted to know what that does for our long-term targets. Do you see this will be a dip and then we go back up to our target? Like, what do you think on the target?
Yeah, that's of course a very good question. There's more to unpack there, and we will bring forward this topic for further discussion in the future for a variety of reasons. The short of it is that it doesn't need to have a long-term implication. This can be a dip of a year, and we're managing sort of our short-term rec positions and trying to lower our expenses, and we can rebound from that in 27, 28, 29, and still hit our goals. We can do that. When you look at the forecast for 27 and 28, obviously those are very tight financial periods as well. So I want to temper that expectation just to think that we're likely going to need to make some adjustments in light of some of the financial headwinds. With all of that said, we are also anticipating major changes in reform to procurement on the horizon because there's implementation of 24/7 emissions accounting, which really changes our approach to that 2030 goal. And we don't yet know exactly what those regulations will entail. Those regulations could say, here's a new accounting methodology, and you are not allowed to use anything else. Or they could say, here's a new accounting methodology, and it's used in this one way, but please go ahead and use anything else you want, wherever you want. And in that scenario, we will need to have a discussion with the board of how do we want to go about measuring emissions? What do we think is the right way to benchmark on this particular issue? And therefore, what do we want to use as our guiding principle for how we procure energy? What is most prudent and cost effective? So there are some pretty big
There's a
changes on
bigger
the horizon.
discussion on the horizon.
Yes.
Okay, but this will help us get.
This is a short-term
Okay.
action, though, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'll pause for now, Chair, because you said.
Thank
you.
you.
2 questions.
Okay, Member Triga.
Thank you. Well, some of my questions, I think, were analogous to what public commenters asked. So I wanted to, I too would be interested in understanding if we have any projections on, like if there's any kind of projected sensitivity analysis on, let's say we increase the Renewable 100 portfolio cost by X, would it, or the likelihood that it might result in Y% up, down. But I was also wondering on that note, I think your top line said there is going to be an overall 11% roughly reduction in bill rates. And so just wondering, is it a linear, like if we were to index Renewable 100 to more or less of the baseline, would it just linearly increase or decrease the percentage reduction in rates compared to our baseline for 25? And then my second question was just on efficiencies and program effectiveness. You included it in scenario A, but not scenario B. If you could just talk about what that efficiency and program effectiveness is, and could we toggle that and use it for B, and what that would do in practice? Thank you.
Yep. On your first question related to R100, we do have a sensitivities table there that kind of lay out different gradients of what the cent change would be. And I think your question is, would that translate to something linear for a revenue contribution? The short answer is yes. It is a linear table. So you can get a sense of the mental math there for what that looks like. I think there was a piece there just related to, have we measured sort of opt-out risk if we were to raise that cost?
Opt-out or opt-down.
Or opt-down risk, yeah.
The baseline.
So that's a really hard thing to measure, first of all, because you're trying to determine, customer elasticity based off of electricity prices, which is a very, very difficult thing to acutely measure. With that said, it's also interesting to look at that in the context, right? If you think back to that rate table I showed, R100 rates are going from 15 cents to 11.6 cents. We're increasing the premium materially, but the generation costs are going to about 24%. So how do you measure that? Now we're talking about a bit of a marketing communications problem more than it is substantively. They're getting a major cost reduction. How do we market that and communicate that effectively to our customers so they understand this is a rate reduction? Yes, the R100 premium relative to PG&E technically went up, and you're saving 24% of your generation costs. Now that may get muted because of other things in the bill as well. So then how do you even really measuring the impact of this one thing relative to the other action? So it's a really hard thing to measure. I don't know that there's a real statistically significant way to measure that, especially when you think about all these sort of confounding of events. The other thing I will say is there are a number of CCAs that have R100 type products, and they price them all a little differently at various times. So what I can say is, without being sort of statistically significant with how we've kind of measured those results, we have seen very consistently that customers on an R100 product, when you move around pricing, don't take action or changes. So that seems fairly reliable given the number of CCAs that have done rough experiments. CPA, Clean Power Alliance, is a CCA in Southern California, just as an example to point to. A majority of their customers are on a R100 type product, and it is at a material premium above what we're seeing here. And they always have been, and they move that number around, and no one ever makes any change. So it's a really I think our expectation is a very modest impact. Your second question was on local development budgeting. I want to clarify. So in scenario A, we are recommending for that scenario a reduction of $15 million. And in that table, what we're trying to show you is where are we getting that $15 million from? $4 million was unearmarked programming from this fiscal year. $9.5 million was unearmarked planning from sort of the pool of funding that we had from historical funding. And the $1.5 million, I wanted to just be clear, is it is unearmarked and it's achieved through cost reductions that we've seen historically and that we anticipate in the near term. So most of that we have. We've done various programs and we've spent, $50,000 less there, $75,000 less here. And, for the last 8 years, we generally budget to do something and we always include a little bit of buffer to go execute on that. And we always try to save costs in terms of administration costs, consulting costs, marketing costs, things like that. And it adds up over time. And so there are just incremental unearmarked funds that we have there to point to. So that's what we're referring to. And we're going to look to be clear, we're going to try to get those efficiencies always in all cases. And then that funding would go back to sort of unearmarked funding for future deployment in local development.
So I think that's kind of the key thing I'm trying to get clarity on, even though scenarios B and C don't include that additional 1.5.
Yeah, and so
that just added conservatism, but we can anticipate, all else being equal, that
I want to be clear about something. We're still going to get operational efficiencies and savings in all scenarios, A, B, C, and everything else. What happens to that funding is the question. In most cases, it sits back in the local development fund for a decision to be made in the future. What we're laying out here is there's those savings that we are now saying, let's reduce our local development funding for those savings. In a scenario where we want to go achieve $15 million reduction, that's what we would seek to do. Does that make sense?
I think so. I'm going to marinate on that.
Okay.
Okay, Member Balch.
Yeah, I have a 12-part question. I'll first apologize that I missed the November meeting. So you may have covered this, staff, and I've watched part of it, but didn't get through it all. So I guess my first question is, and this is the hard one, how did the board? Let me phrase it in a way that may be palatable. When I read this and I see this chart that you presented in scenario B, it uses approximately 15 million of reserves, and you're asking for authorization up to 30 million. So I then look at the next agenda item we have, but also slide 7, and it says that on-bill surplus credits is $13 million. So I call that a debt-funded distribution in my life, right? We're using reserves to fund operations of 15 million, but 13 million is going to be the on-bill credit. I get it was earmarked in the past. I do. I get it was earmarked and built up. But can you help me understand why that is something, I guess maybe you'll just say it's board action, but how that's something not in the mix of a revenue lever or tool that you're using here?
Yeah, it was an explicit request or recommendation that staff had made last meeting was to reallocate that particular funding to put in the rate stabilization fund, which would in essence increase the $150 million in the rate stabilization fund by that amount of money, and therefore be able to use that for release in a deficit period, and therefore could reduce reserves or any number of the other sort of measures that we're considering here. That was an item that the board did discuss and was not comfortable moving. And so I did not take it upon myself to represent that in this scenario. It seemed that the direction was somewhat clear not to do that.
Okay. Part B of that, so second question of that is, we at the executive committee have talked about the $7 million of grants. That's not on here. That's something that the executive committee's heard maybe in coming up to this board eventually. But is that a similar allocation or earmark of money that was set aside in the past? And so that grant money is still in our possession. That cash is still in our possession, right?
That is correct. There's probably, I'm not going to get the number exactly right, but there's about $70 million in our local development fund that's unspent. And certainly that's allocated throughout a variety of programs and services, some active, some soon to be released. And yes, there's about $7 million earmarked for grants that is not part of this local development reduction, but is unspent and sitting within our balance sheet, if you will.
Okay. And question 2 in my 12 parts. I want to check my understanding. When I see the presentation you've outlined, it appears to me that there are several different financial tools that you as staff are recommending we authorize to address a pretty significant swing in our revenues and cash flow of this organization. When I see them, it appears that almost every tool that I'm aware of in my history of AVA is being used to some extent, and it only appears that reserves remain after or if this scenario actually played out for future years. Is that correct? 200, you'd have $300 million of reserve left, but there's no other tool after that.
That is correct.
And PCIA Track 2, which is a legal change of how PCIA is calculated outside of all of our control because it's at the state level, could bring a significant impact outside of just standard procurement and producing and delivering power.
That's possible, yes.
Okay. I know where I'm going, but I'll conclude that's my questions.
Okay. I am looking around the room at my colleagues to see, Member Rush. Yeah.
Time to take a second dive.
Yes.
Thank you. I guess what I wanted to ask about the reduction in value proposition is, could you give us an example? I was hoping to see maybe a bill, like your average bill of what it looks like for, I know it's an estimate, but what someone's average bill might look like if they have this reduction in the PG rates and the increase in our proposition, or the decrease in our proposition, depending what you're looking at.
You're asking what is the net impact on an average bill?
On a customer, like what are we talking about? Like what is someone going to be paying next March?
How is that?
I think that's in the public webinar slides. Let me see if I can pull that up. I'm happy to phone a friend with Kelly and Annie. I know participating. If they have a slide they can reference me to, I'll
I'm
see.
just wondering, sort of in the real world, because this is all very heady, of course, and what the average thing would be.
Okay. So the board can't hear you because you're not mic'd.
It's page 143 of the PDF, if anyone has that open.
143
Yes.
of the PDF.
Yeah, I thought it was on.
Yeah. Oh, it's right. Okay.
Yeah, so for speaking just of the, hi, I'm Kelly Brezovec, Senior Director of Account Services. So the average residential customer today is paying about $50 for AVA's generation services. So I'm not speaking about delivery because that's PG&E's fees. They would be looking at about a $15 a month reduction in generation. I'm not going to do live math because, but then, so basically some of that will be eaten up by an increase in delivery. I can go back and do some math and get you a rough delta for delivery, but I mean, a meaningful reduction of $15 a month.
Okay. So
for generation charges.
I guess that's what I'm trying to get at and ask, that with all of this, the projection is customers are going to see lower bills.
Yes, $15 a month in generation, a slight increase in delivery, but overall, I'd call it a 10%, 11% reduction overall.
In their bill, even with.
On the electricity portion of their bill.
Sure, okay.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I think that's what I was getting at, right? I know we can't do exacts, but.
Yeah.
And then I guess the question is, it doesn't seem like it is that much, whether we do the, what are we at? 0.1 cent or 0.5%, they're still going to see an overall reduction.
Yes.
Okay. I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Okay, I'm now turning my attention to our colleagues who are attending by Zoom, see if there are any additional questions that have floated up to the service at this time. I do not see any hands, so we'll do one last call for questions. We have our CAC director. Yes, of course.
Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to report out on the action by the CFP. I think just want to thank staff and the board sort of foresight to have that significant reserve there. So the CAC supported option B, specifically with a couple modifications. They really want to focus on keeping those REC levels or no rec procurement reduction to one of the members spoke to the concern and focus of us really looking to keep affordability, of course, but also our goal towards that 100% clean energy. So adjusting that would change our perception that we're backing away from that. I understand staff's sort of position in 3 years, we'll still get to our 100% renewable, but that was one element that was spoken to about not touching. That would be about $10 million off that 250, which was like slide 11. But how we're raising renewable 100 premium from 1.5 to 1.75, knowing that the solar for PG&E program was 3 to 6 or 7 cents to premium, we'd still below that historical rate. So that 1.75 would then cover about 6.6 of that $10 million deficit. So we didn't want to go start telling staff what else should they do or any other actions because we have a $3.4 million delta. But, you know, we had the motion passed, all in favor except one member. So again, looking at initially staff proposed that 1.5 cent discount. Let's see. Yes. That premium, excuse me, that 0.5 to Bright Choice discount, didn't touch that. Renewable initially was 1.5 cents. We're saying take it up to 1.75 cents. So that, you know, offsetting that reduction or no rec procurement reduction. So we can stay focused on bringing more clean energy resources online and those jobs, et cetera, the PPAs. So focusing on option B, not touching the RECs, understanding in 3 years we might still be there, and raising the renewable premium 100 from 1.5 staff recommendation to 1.75, and allowing staff to work through that $3.4 million delta or the board direction. And the last thing about the forward focus of really attacking the impact of PCIA to affordability and these challenges. Of course, staff and legal and everybody else is working to make actions, talk about the comments CPUC, but having the public facing campaign on the impact of PCIA to affordability. So really focusing how we can put pressure and show that the PCIA is really impacting us and what can we do with that? Because that's really making those swings. When rates come down, then we're paying those legacy costs and everything's getting more expensive. So if we can really focus on how really attacking that as a board, because I'm just going to be a constituent or ratepayer, really focusing on how we really attack that. So option B again, not touching the rec levels, but possibly increasing the premium from 1.5 staff recommendation to 1.75, covering about 67% of that deficit that's not created because we're not touching the recs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that feedback. Really appreciate that. Input from our CAC. I am turning to our vice chair.
So kind of seeing the state of discussion, are you open to a motion?
I am open to a motion. I did have Member Roche ask me if you're okay. Okay. So I don't see any other questions. So yes, I am open to, we do have one more. Yes. If we can wrap this up though, that'd be great.
Sorry, yeah, one more round, but okay. For the compliance period, excess procurement, switching over to that, how much of it, like the set aside, do we have? Like if we continue to have consecutive lean periods and have to really lean into that procurement, how many years reserve do we have if we are still to be able to meet our goals? And then I'll just ask kind of rapid fire. If we continue to run structural deficits, as the reserve OPEX gets closer to that 25% minimum mark, will we need to do something else? And what is the process by which that will come back to the board?
Your first question, do we have, what does our excess look like? It was laid out in those slides, I think 16 and 17. We have 7.3% excess of renewable energy procurement from 24 and what we're forecasting for 25, but this year's not over yet. So there's certainly uncertainty there. And then for large hydro, it's 8% from 24 and what we forecast for 25. So they're not huge numbers for us to be able to utilize in 26 and 27. We are forecasting in that scenario B that we'll use a good portion of that excess procurement in 26 to lower our procurement levels. And so we look at it across the 4-year period, it will meet those board approved targets, some years over, some years under. And so we are going to utilize most of that in 26. We don't anticipate saving much of that for 27 as an example. Your second question was now
We are
forgotten.
starting to get close to that 25%.
Oh, yes.
Minimum, and just wondering.
Thank you for
next steps.
reserves. We don't have a exact backup plan for how we'll address that. There by policy, that is a minimum level. There are considerations for us to revisit the policy. There are considerations for us to find other ways to contribute to reserves to ensure that we remain above that level. And there's nothing to say explicitly that, what happens if you go to 24%. This is an internally set policy. The credit rating agencies may evaluate that, have some questions, and we want to make sure we're able to address those concerns. But unfortunately, I can't say objectively it's, one thing will happen, but we want to be mindful of that and make sure we're managing that risk carefully.
It looks like we have another question from Member Balch.
Yeah, and just to clarify, Howard, the reserves by the nature of adding new territory or by other load coming online as we expand to San Joaquin, Lathrop, and Stockton, frankly, does dictate by our policy that we have to bolster them because we obviously have larger exposure at risk, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Are you ready for comments or are you gonna?
Okay, and how about this is our last question, and then we're
Yeah,
then we're-
for
okay.
me, it's my last,
Okay,
I promise.
It's 8:30, we gotta move on.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask about, so this is actually going to go to the first half of FY 27. So I wanted to make sure that when you bring the budget back to us for FY 26, that we are at least sort of like taking a look at this scenario B and where we are, and as far as what happens with that next budget setting.
Of course, this will be, we will be.
This takes us into the next fiscal year.
Next fiscal year,
Yeah,
that's
okay,
correct. We're
okay.
certainly going to be monitoring this closely. And we're going to bring this forward for updates to the board, where it's not as if many months will go by without us talking about
Right.
how things are tracking. And absolutely, of course, in the next budget setting process, which will be in the May, June timeframe for next year, we're going to be talking about this very actively as well and seeing if we can make any adjustments.
Yeah, because I assume you're taking it into the first half of the next year because we won't have actuals to know what the effect of this was, right, until that time. Is
Yeah,
that-
this goes in the first half of next year for a few reasons. One is, as I noted, the risk here is significant. So I want to make sure we have forward planning in place. Any adjustments we make, the earlier we make them, the better. And two, when you look at bad numbers in 26, it's important that there's visibility of that. So we want to be really open and transparent with the board to understand what the forecast looks like. And we know those numbers don't look good. That's unlikely to change. PCI reform has happened. We see the rates that came out in October. They're about to be finalized. Those are going to be the numbers. The earlier we can disclose that to the board, the better from my perspective.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Okay, this is an action item. So at this point in time, we're going to switch from question and answer mode into deliberation mode. So I am looking at the vice chair.
So I move that we adopt the resolution included in our packet as item 14A. That is my motion.
Okay, there is a motion on the floor to adopt the staff recommendation as set
Correct.
forth in the agenda packet.
I will second.
There is a second. So moved by the Vice Chair Gonzalez, seconded by Member Murata. Do we have any conversation, any deliberation? Yes, Member Balch.
Okay, so again, I apologize for missing the November meeting. As I said, I saw parts of it, but I'm gonna just give you my maybe less informed opinion based on it. I walk into this and I see that these numbers are estimates. I see that we are below our reserve targets as we're adding territory in Stockton, San Joaquin area, 50%. And if B is played out, if it is reality, we will be approximately $90 million above the minimum target. That's it. 90 above the minimum target. We'll still have the 25%, but we'll only be 90 above. I don't know about everyone here, but it is sad to see the smallest discount from Bright Choice being something we're moving to. I think it's necessary action. And the procurement targets for renewable, which I know a lot of my constituents are very concerned with. But I'm going to tell you that I see this PCI track 2 risk as significant. And I think the line of credit element as the last option at the cost it represents when reserves are depleted is another thing that concerns me. So I respect that there was a deliberation about the budget surplus on bill credits. I know it's our next agenda item, but I cannot, in good faith, use reserves to support the on-bill credit. I don't think we should be using what I call a debt finance distribution. If operations sustain, fine. My basis for this is the premise of the on-bill credits in a rising price environment makes a lot of sense, right? Helping our residents, our constituents afford their bill. In a period where they will see, as projected in this, falling pricing, having it where we exasperate that discount or that return of that to them, but at the significant risk to the organization, or greater risk to the organization than we need. So I'm going to ask for a friendly amendment that the budget surplus bill credits, which will eliminate item 15, by the way, but that it come back or be allowed to stay on here as one of the tools, and the reserve number, which is 15 million on this, would discount or decline to 2 million. So that's my friendly amendment ask, because I don't think we should be doing it in light of the agency risk.
Okay, thank you for laying that out so clearly. I do actually agree with you, but it's not at this point my decision. It is the decision of the person who has made the motion.
So last time we discussed this extensively, because it is a historical for this past year bill credit, on net, we decided that it was okay to continue. I agree with the logic of what is being offered. I would be more open to increasing the premium for the renewable energy to help cut that delta, given what we've learned about the PG&E comparable product, and knowing that the demand response is highly inelastic for those that are acquiring renewable power. The last thought that I'll leave, just to clarify from what we talked about last time, I personally am not supportive of on-bill credits for next year in this high, falling price environment. So at this point in time, I will respectfully reject the request.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I follow up?
Yes.
I understand that. However, I will encourage us. I don't believe that the board saw all the layout as the staff has presented today with all of the different financial tools they are using for the organization. So I understand the entire premise of it, but I'll respectfully not be able to support the motion, but I'm going to explain why. I'm not going to be able to support it because, again, we're using reserves, not operations, to basically fund those on-bill credits. And if I may, they were earmarked surpluses from the past based upon information and assumptions and revenues generated there. But now that we've moved forward, I think we should take that additional learning and presentation into account. So I'm going to do that and appreciate the clarity.
The other thing I might add is when we made the decision to do the 10%, I think, set aside of the surplus into on-bill credits, that was in September. So that was before we actually had the full view. And at that time, staff's recommendation was that we allocate 100% of the surplus to our rate stabilization fund. And at the time, we felt like it had been our pattern and practice to always do the on-bill credits. But to Member Balch's point, this was September, so we did not actually have the full picture in front of us. So I continue to agree with Member Balch.
I'll make a substitute motion then.
Okay. But we do have a motion on the floor to adopt the staff recommendation as outlined here in our agenda. We have a second. I'm checking. Oh, go ahead. There's a substitute motion. So, sorry.
I have made a substitute motion, and there's a comment by.
Okay, so you need a second, right?
I am looking for. Well, I apologize. I've made the motion, Chair. I would like to see if there's a second.
Okay, let's see if there's a second. Yes. Okay. Member Rickman.
Thank you. I just want to clarify that was Member Balch made a substitute motion, correct?
It is.
Yes.
Correct.
And I'll second that.
Okay, great.
And there's been a question of clarification of the substitute motion, Chair.
Yes,
May I-
thank you very much.
So my substitute motion, just for clarification, is exactly staff's recommendation is presented in as B, as the original motion. And it is to additionally add back the 13 million on bill credit to the mix of tools, so not do that, thereby reducing the reserve from usage from 15 to 2, so that less reserves are used and stay in the reserve account to accumulate and use and gain interest.
Can I just share to
I know you want a little bit more for your authorization, right? So staff wants 15 million more, so it's going to be 2 to 17, but the premise of the presentation of what you did is you only presented what you needed.
Yeah, and I would also just add, I assume with what you're motioning, that would assume to put $13 million into the rate stabilization fund with
Basically,
authorization to use the rate stabilization fund at the full amount.
Thank you for the clarification. That's what I would say. And I believe Member Rickman would maintain that.
Okay.
Substitute motion.
Okay, so yes, now we have time for discussion and deliberation on the substitute motion. Member Roche.
Thanks. And will we do the substitute motion first? Is
We
that what's
will.
going to happen? Okay.
We will.
So I totally respect. I know Member Balch wasn't here at the time. And I do stand by the recommendation for the on-bill credits. It was our pattern practice. I mean, the discussion we had was, the customers paid this excess basically, and we're saying for this cycle, they paid this excess. And so I think I think the pattern practice of paying them back for especially to our lower income customers, credit for what we saw as surplus. I think we heard already that the chair is saying, we don't even know if we're going to get to the full rate stabilization need or the full reserve need. And so for us to put that back into the rate stabilization fund to wait until we find out what the full picture is, I do feel like is unfair to our lowest income customers who could use this credit at this, right away. Instead, we're saying, we'll put it back just in case maybe they get that credit later. I think sort of the look back to me was still worth our pattern and practice to give them that credit. So I stand by it. I know we're in a different scenario now, and I understand that, but we are a community service agency, and I think the credit back to the customer is a really big value that I think we've had and maintained. And I think even in this scenario, I think it's worth maintaining. So that's what I wanted to say about the substitute motion. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, deliberations on the substitute motion? Member Sakura Kihara.
I was just going to say my reaction when I read through the staff report, and I had not actually read the Community Advisory Committee's letter at that time. It sounds like its a line is actually that the most painful part of this, there's a lot of painful parts to this, but having to reduce the REC procurement reduction. And so the idea of, I don't know about moving that 10 million down to 0, but at least moving it to scenario C, 10 million down to 5 million, and then offsetting it with a 0.25% increase to the R100. I think that would actually more than offset it. That was something that's interesting to me. I know that from a logistics perspective may be difficult because we already have 2 motions on the table, but that was the piece that actually I would want to see addressed.
So with that, are you offering up a friendly amendment?
Well, I guess before friendly, I guess I would ask the maker of the substitute
yeah.
motion your opinion on that, because before we try to amend it.
Could you clarify?
So basically, use the REC procurement reduction estimate from scenario C. So make it 5 million instead of 10 million, which means that we can then hit a higher renewable target for our Right Choice offering, and offset it with a 1.75 cent premium for R100.
And what for Bright Choice?
Right Choice would stay at a 0.5% discount.
Oh, that's a different slide that you're using. Give me a second.
It's similar to what the Community Advisory Committee recommended, except I'm proposing to go from 10 down to 5 instead of 10 down to 0.
Howard, I'm sorry. Could you help me out? I'm
Sure.
looking for the slide that shows a percentage change per. Okay, there we go. Slide 12, actually, right?
So in essence, that would, you would take scenario B but lower the renewable energy portion to the $5 million option, which would mean, I guess in essence, instead of an estimate of $2 million in reserves, it would be an estimate of $7 million in reserves plus 15 for buffer. Is that the right way?
Well, no, but
No,
then if you
because
took
he's
the
on the
R100 up to 1.75, you'd actually get 6.6 million back.
Oh, I see.
So it would more than off. It's actually
Oh, I see. Okay.
slightly more.
So it actually would reduce your reserve number by $1 million ish
1.6
or
or
so.
something,
Okay, I see.
I apologize. I don't think I was following when I was trying to find the slide. So still staying with scenario B on the substitute motion. Let's just maybe walk through it so we're there. I'm saying take reserves to 3, or excuse me, 2, put back into rate stabilization an additional 13 million from the usage of the on-bill credit. And then your friendly amendment request is for the renewable target go from 10 to 5, right? And then you were looking to, I would be fine with just that, by the way, just sitting there, because now we're using some of our reserve to maintain our procurement target. I think that was still keeping our Bright Choice and Renewable 100 premiums as outlined in B. I think I could be there without adding more to the mix, right?
Okay, yeah, that works too. If we bumped it from 1.5 cents to 1.75, you'd actually get close to 0 out of reserves, actually.
Well, so then,
but I would support either of those.
oh, I see now. I see what you're saying right here, because then we'd add basically back.
Yeah.
I'll be agreeable to the original friendly amendment as stated. So I got you, Chair. Don't worry.
Which is.
Oh, my goodness. All right. We've all got to be wide awake for this
So
one.
If
Okay.
everyone has page 8 of their slides, right, which is the 3 scenarios presented, and Member Rickman's going to have to agree to the friendly amendment if we're there, but rate stabilization increases 13 million. Bright Choice is 0.5 value proposition, but instead of 1.5 for renewable 100, it's 1.75. I will need help from staff. That adds to that, goes to 71, correct?
That adds 6.6 million, or
It doesn't go to full 71 because the Bright Choice didn't change it.
Oh, so that's what we'll need there. Okay, so it goes up some amount. The renewable procurement goes from 10 to 5, and the reserve basically goes to 0. That's the friendly amendment with the substitute motion. If our second will accept the friendly amendment. If we could kill the slide, please, Ingrid.
Okay, let's take the slide down so we can look at Member Rickman to see if he accepts the friendly amendment.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Okay.
Like we worked hard.
Wait,
on
can
that.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
I would like to
yes.
clarify what.
Absolutely,
Thank you.
Member Roche, yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
No, I'm asking you to be clear, like, so what,
Oh.
so.
Oh,
tell
I
me
thought
what
you
your
were gonna
original motion
clarify.
was. Yes, I need clarification on what.
Okay,
we're
I can
voting
restate it.
Yeah.
So scenario B is still the framework. The first part is the rate stabilization has additional dollars from the removal or not doing the on-bill credits. Okay, so that's how you have additional dollars there, approximately 13 million. The value proposition changes only for renewable 100. Instead of being 1.5, goes to 1.75 cents per kilowatt hour.
I got it.
That adds some dollars.
6.6 million.
6.6.
Okay, thank you very much. I was 6.6
Plus
million.
the 13, so that's 19.6 roughly.
The next line, which is the renewable procurement, we're going to try to maintain a higher renewable procurement, which I agree is part of the original mission of AVA. So instead of a 10 million in savings, it will only be a 5 million in savings. And then reserves as a plug drops to 0 or basically 0. Although we would still allow staff an additional 15 million in case operationally it became necessary. That way, we're not using reserves, why I'm supporting it. We're not using reserves to fund a non-bill credit while prices are dropping and our customers and constituents will see a reduction in their energy costs. While I believe trying to preserve the AVA mission and keeping our reserves healthy in case there's future headwinds. That's the motion.
Was that clear? Okay, the vice chair has a clarifying question.
Just a question, I think CEO had asked for $30 million of authority.
Yep.
I'm assuming that that maintains within your motion.
It did for 15. Now that we've dropped from originally 15 of the initial plus 15, we're going to 0 to 15. So 15 is his authority.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so is everyone clear on what we're voting on? Okay, great. So we're gonna go ahead and vote. Oh, wait, no, I do have hands up. I'm sorry. We gotta move this along. So
Yes, I
quickly.
just want to make the point that the CAC strongly supported the on-bill credits a few times, and we reiterated that. And so we still support that. And I just want to make sure that's clear. And then
Thank
it
you.
was through these RSF.
Thank you. Okay, Member Trigan.
Yeah, I wanted to just acknowledge this is a really difficult decision for me, and I am still deciding where I am because we did make a commitment several months ago around on-bill credits. At the same time, we are in a much more precarious financial position than what we knew about that number of months ago. I think just taking a step back, when folks look at their PG&E bill, they are going to see an overall reduction.
Yes.
And when there is an overall reduction, then we will still need to do work around messaging for sure. I do worry a little bit about kind of a potential reputational risk associated with making a commitment and then going back on it. But that may also be overcome by the fact that bills are going to be lower. I would like to see if we can have a mid-cycle review, just looking at the practice, particularly around the CARE and FARA. And if there was I'm not going to ask that be a friendly amendment, but if there is a commitment to do that, I think I will be more comfortable or have fewer misgivings around supporting the substitute.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, that would be an assurance we'd need from our CEO.
Absolutely. Just to clarify, you're asking for a near-term review of our financials to understand what the forecast looks like and how things are tracking. Is that what you're?
Mid-year.
Mid-year, yeah.
Mid-year, yeah, 6 months in.
Absolutely, yeah. I would anticipate perhaps even more frequently than that. Yep.
Okay. Okay, one more question, Member Roche.
Well, not a question. I guess because we're in deliberations, I just wanted to say, I do feel like we litigated this. We made a decision. We then reaffirmed that in the next meeting. And so I won't be supporting the substitute motion because I feel like I took a stand on something that, that I understood in the precarious situation we're all in. I'm clearly understanding it. So I appreciate, with all due respect, Member Balch. I just feel like we sort of put ourselves out there to make that decision. I'm standing by it. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a substitute motion. We're going to go ahead and vote. And actually, this was a suggestion from another board member, and we're going to try it out right now. And we'll try it for both. If we get to we'll try it with the substitute motion. And if we get to the other motion, we'll get for the next motion, which is we'll have the person who made the motion and the seconder vote first. So I'm throwing a curveball.
Pleasanton does this.
To
Second does it.
Raisa, that we're going to start with Member Balch. We're going to go with Member Rickman, and then we'll go into our normal order, and we'll do the same for if we get to the next motion, we'll do the same thing then. Okay.
Sounds good.
Let's go ahead with a roll call vote.
Pleasanton,
Aye.
San Joaquin County,
Yes.
Alameda County,
No.
Albany,
Yep.
Berkeley,
Pass.
I think you have to say abstain.
No, I'm passing. That is allowed. Come back to me.
Oh, you're going to come
Thank
back.
you.
Okay, sorry.
okay, Dublin,
Yes.
Emerville,
No.
Fremont, Fremont. Hayward,
No.
Lathrop, Livermore,
Yeah.
Newark,
No.
Oakland,
No.
Stockton. Stockton. Tracy,
No.
Union City,
Yes.
San Leandro,
Yes.
Piedmont,
Yes. And then we have
motion-
to come back.
Yeah. Berkeley, okay. Berkeley,
Abstain.
abstain.
And then
Motion
do we,
carries.
do we miss anybody else? No? I just want to make sure everybody had a chance to vote.
Yes.
Did Newark have a chance to vote?
Yep.
Yep.
No, yeah, I did it.
We're gonna go back to Fremont and Stockton and see if they're.
Yes. Fremont should no longer be online, but Fremont,
They've fallen off.
Stockton,
Okay, I think everyone's had a chance to vote. Raise your hand if you have not. Okay, let's go ahead and tally the votes.
Right, so we have 8 yes, 6 no, 1 abstain, and 3 not present.
Motion passes.
So the motion passes.
Motion passes. Okay. Okay, so we so we do not, the alternate motion passes, so we do not get to the underlying motion. That is expired. I don't know what the right term is under Robert's Rules of Order. So that it's expunged, I guess. So, and that also
Close our next item.
closes out agenda item 14, and it negates agenda item 15.
I'd
which-
ask staff if it did, if I may, Chair. on
Sorry,
that.
ask staff, sorry.
I apologize, just for point of clarification. It may be wise, I don't know if you want to take a break to see if staff wants to evaluate if it negates item 15.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Or if it,
Yeah,
because
I
I
don't-
would want to make sure we.
That's
know.
right. That's right. So I don't really want to take a break given the late hour, so I'm just going to turn to
just
our
stop.
CEO and to our
I
attorney
think
present.
the confirmation is that we're reallocating the on-bill credit out to the rate stabilization fund, and therefore item 15 is a moot item. So we would cancel that, yes.
Agreed?
So,
Okay. Okay. So that we're moving now on to agenda item number 16, which is board member and staff announcements, including requests to place items on future board of director meeting agendas. Does anyone have an item that they would like to place on future meeting agenda? No? Okay. Any announcements? No? Okay. So this is our last meeting of 2025. This definitely, we had, very robust discussion about difficult challenges that are being faced by our agency. I just want to thank my.
Already.
Oh, sorry? I can't tell if somebody is speaking.
member can.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay. So I just wanted to thank my fellow board members. All of you give your time and your energy on top of your day jobs, your family and community commitments. And I really truly appreciate the thoughtfulness that each of you brings to this body. I just want to point out that tonight we had nearly perfect attendance. And I think that speaks to the commitment that each of us has to the success of our Joint Powers Authority venture here that we're in together. Howard already thanked Ava staff, and I want to just reiterate that thanks. I know we all appreciate the hard work that the staff does, and I hope everyone, my colleagues, as well as Ava staff, gets to spend quality time with friends and family over the holidays. And looking ahead to 2026, we are looking at some procedural changes, one of which we just tried out here in terms of the voting order to improve meeting efficiency. And with that, I will wish everyone happy holidays and best wishes for the new year. The meeting is adjourned at 8:58 p.m.
Thank you.